What's up, everybody? We're here live. We are going to be here for the debate, Donald Trump and Kamala Harris. This is going to be absolutely fascinating. Now, there are a lot of people on social media saying that Trump's got this one in the bag, but don't count your chickens. We got to see what the performance is going to be like. But based on Kamala Harris's past performance, a lot of people have a lot of confidence in Donald Trump. I think that's fair. So the debate will be starting in about 1 hour. But while we're here, we do have many members of Congress who are going to join us in conversation as sort of a pre-debate show as things get kicked off. So before we get into everything, smash the like button, subscribe to this channel, share the show with your friends, head over to castbrew.com, support our coffee. This is how we, it's our own coffee company. We sell coffee. You can buy it there. You can head over to timcast.com, click join us to become a member and support our work directly. Starting off the show, we have a couple of amazing members of Congress. Lauren Boebert is here.
Hey, everyone.
You want to just a brief introduction for anybody who might not know you?
Sure. I'm Lauren Boebert. I represent Colorado's 3rd District, and right now I'm currently the most senior Republican in our delegation, which is crazy. So I've been working hard to help other races in Colorado. We have some really good candidates out there, but I came up in the ranks just as a pissed-off mom and business owner. I never was interested in politics and got frustrated enough to decide to challenge a 5-term incumbent, and I won, and I've been here ever since. Learned real quick in D.C., nothing happens without force. So we've been real aggressive and got a lot accomplished, and I have some really great friends that I've made here who are focused on saving our country, helping get President Trump reelected. And, I got one of them right here with me, one of my greatest friends. We sit on Center's Row together on the House. Nice. I'm sure y'all have seen us whenever they're taking pictures and we're taking votes, but it's usually me and Tim Burchett and Matt Gates sitting there on Center's Row. And, we have a lot of fun.
Right on. Well, Rep. Burchett, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name's Tim Burchett, Knoxville, Tennessee. It's the only place in America where people don't speak with an accent. I am currently the 435th most powerful member of Congress, captain of the 1982 Bearden High School football team. We went 5-5. Y'all might have heard of me. I really am worried that we're going to lose our country, for lack of a better word. I remember when Bill Clinton won the White House, I'm looking at my daddy across the table. We'd worked the polls all day. I was in the State House, and he prayed. He said, "I'll say the blessing." And he said, "Lord, please don't let us lose our country." And I feel that every day. I feel like we are on the cusp of losing our country if we're not very careful.
We also have Hannah Claire hanging out.
Oh, hey, I'm Hannah Claire Brimlow. I'm a writer for scnr.com. I'm here on the show. I'm really happy to be joined by both of you guys tonight. Raymond's here.
I am here. Thank you for having me. My name is Raymond G. Stanley Jr. I'm looking forward to this beautiful roundtable with politicians and watching Trump and the Kamala debate. I'm looking for some fireworks. I'm from Pennsylvania, the most important state. That's probably going to be in this next election, so let's go red. Thank you for having me, Tim.
You also have a military background?
I do. I'm a United States Marine veteran.
Right on. So it'll be interesting to hear your take on a lot of this stuff too.
Yes.
We're having feedback because we actually have a live audience for those that are watching at home, and we build these studios on the fly. That's how it goes. But let's get started with some debate predictions, I guess. Now, one of the funniest things I think we've seen so far. I don't know if we can pull up this clip that Benny Johnson posted. They're giving Kamala Harris a smaller podium because she's 5'4", and what is Donald Trump? He's like 6'1", I think.
6'3", I thought.
Yeah.
6'3"? He's bigger than that. So you can tell right away that there are concerns about how Kamala Harris is going to appear on stage. But I'm curious what our friends from Congress think about how this is going to turn out.
Well, first of all, I had a double platform in my last debate. They tried to give me one stool. I said, oh, no, I will have two because I'm 5 foot even. And I was towering them in. It was pretty great. But, I think right now we need to have as fair of a debate as possible, and they're going to try to elevate Kamala in many other ways. So, I mean, whether she has the podium or not, whatever it is, they're still going to try to elevate her in every other way to win.
But you think that the height thing really does matter in the perception of the voters?
I think it actually does matter. But maybe some of these unaffiliated voters will see her as a woman and, say they'll feel sympathy that she's so much smaller and kind of have that compassion towards her for it. I think it's really frustrating when you get dressed up and then it's all covered up by a podium.
What do you
when
think,
you pick your best outfit.
Right. You can see my collar. Great.
I think it shows what's important to them is appearance and not production. I think that she is she will be a disaster as president of the United States. She does not have the knowledge. She does not have the people skills. And she has the track record of a complete failure unless you're a Marxist.
And there's the better answer.
And I think that's why they will. That bunch is looking at appearances because they know that they don't have anything to produce. They don't have a product.
And I think the mainstream media will use her appearance as a way to defend her, right?
Right.
I mean,
That's what I was saying. Right.
Right. I mean, I'm kind of expecting her to come out in a bright color to portray that sort of.
I would love to
woman.
see her in something other than brown.
Gray. Come on,
goodness.
It really, I mean, I'm not even trying to be mean. It just doesn't bring energy.
No.
It's sort of a lifeless campaign already, but they're going to use her inherent female traits, that she's smaller in stature, that Donald Trump is taller, to defend her. If she makes any mistake at all, it's because he's a big bad man and she's
right,
just
exactly.
a nice
And
girl boss.
may have the appearance that he's bullying her because she's smaller. But really, I mean, she's running for the most powerful position in the world, and she wasn't even elected to be there. She wasn't voted in by anyone. She was selected by the establishment behind the curtains. And so, I mean, to be running there, she needs to be able to run on issues. I see she has an issues tab finally on her campaign page. She actually has issues. I guess we're going to hear some of those. She says that her values have never changed. Well, let's take her at her word, because she has been radically opposed to everything that she's put out so far on this campaign trail, anything that she's mentioned when it comes to energy or fracking, or even supposedly building the wall at the southern border, something that she has said is racist, something that she said was just it was just for appearance. And now she's got issues. So we know she has issues, but she's got those posted up on her campaign page finally.
Yeah. Let's see if she remembers them tonight.
Right.
Did you see the CNN story of all outlets that in 2019, Kamala Harris, she was in favor of giving sex change surgery to illegal immigrants. It was so shocking that Aaron Burnett went, wait. Gender transition surgery for detained migrants? Like, yeah, she was in favor of that. Seems like something that wouldn't be a high priority item for somebody running for president. It feels like Kamala just pulled a bunch of leftist things out of a basket and jammed them together and said, I'm for whatever this is. Please vote for me.
Right. Well, just like Burchett said, he is afraid that we are losing our country. And Kamala has been to the left of even Bernie Sanders on many of these issues. She's left of the squad on many of these issues. Ran in presidential campaigns where she has been the most progressive, most extreme candidate on the stage. And now she's trying to moderate. Even Bernie Sanders is like, yeah, sure, of course she's going to say what she's got to say to win the election. And that's what the people back home need to really take in. She has to say whatever she has to say. It's not anything that she actually believes in that's being presented right now.
I do find it fascinating because I guess traditionally a politician is going to find their key issues, and they're going to have their passion issues that they're focused on that help propel them forward. Maybe it's something that's generally popular, and then there's going to be issues that are ancillary that they're not super familiar with, and they're going to go to their consultants and say, I don't understand a whole lot about, issue number, like issue letter A, like what is going to be more, what do the people care about more? So you're going to try and round out your campaign, focusing on what you think is important to you, followed by what you think is important to constituents. It seems like Kamala doesn't have anything that's important to her at all. It's literally just go on Google Trends and put those in my campaign proposals, and then maybe people will vote for me. It clearly didn't work in 2020. I don't know why it's going to work now when she has these campaign policies now listed on her website. But it's relatively generic. There's some stuff in there that I think is fine, like the child tax credit I like. But I don't believe that she's actually for any of this, because you've got clips of her saying basically everything.
Right. Go ahead, Burchett.
I think all she's doing is looking for something to get a majority. I firmly believe with debates, except for the last one in our lifetime, there really hasn't been any debates that have mattered too much. The Kennedy-Nixon debates before I was born, Nixon looked tired. He had a shadow. He needed to shave, and they used that to hammer him with a young Kennedy. But I think my theory with debates holds. You bring your side, I bring my side, and we both leave thinking we won. And that's what it'll be tonight. I think you'll see CNNs, the legacy media, if you will, they'll say how much Harris won. You'll see the conservative media outlets say that Trump won. And what I hope happens tonight is I hope President Trump just lets her speak, because when she speaks,
Yes.
she is her own worst enemy. And if he can keep from attacking her personally and just specifically on programs, because you'll see that with Democrats and liberals in general, they'll vote for the program. They're not voting for the person. They don't know anything about her. They don't care anything about her life. They don't care anything. They just want that gravy train to never end. And with conservatives, they're voting for a person. They see something in that person, a Ronald Reagan, Donald Trump. They see something in there that they like and that they can identify with. And so it is a completely different objective that you'll see tonight.
And
There was some great commentary on Fox News. They said that Donald Trump should refrain from calling her Commie Kamala, and he should refer to as Madam Vice President at every opportunity. I completely agree.
Yes. Well, and really, if he keeps from personally attacking her, then that's great. I mean, if you go in there saying that she doesn't know the issues, that she's not intelligent, that she's an idiot, or whatever attack there is, well, anything that she does that is above those attacks is exceeding expectations. So we are lowering the bar so much for her with the attacks that anything that she does that seems halfway intelligent is a huge win. So I agree that there shouldn't be the attacks, and he should just let her talk. You know, maybe she'll just talk about the color of coffee cup lids or something.
I mean, I hope he takes any kind of lead conversation from the moderators and just says, you have this in your platform. Can you explain it to me? What do you mean by this? I want him to drive that home, because I really don't think she knows what's even on her website. It took her long enough to put it up.
And I hope he points out that on their website is just a rehash of Biden's failed policies. And that is what she's touting. And I think he can differentiate himself from her by saying, your energy policy, that's why gasoline is at this. That's why it was much lower when I was president. The price of groceries, $600 a month, and it's actually more than that working families are struggling to get by. You know, so I think that's a huge, huge issue with working America, and I think it resonates well. And when I talked to him, that's what I stressed. I said, Mr. President, you do a great job of telling us what's wrong with this world and country and how we got here, but you do a much better job of telling us how to fix it. And I want you to focus on how to fix it, because dadgummit, people are hurting in this country, and they need somebody that can say, my mama used to say about Ronald Reagan, she said, honey, when he would get on the radio or on the television, it was just like an old friend talking to him. I hope President Trump looks into that TV and does like he did to Isabel Burchett, my little girl, when her sock was caught in her boot and she was hopping around, and he leaned down and said, Isabel, what's wrong, honey? And she said, my sock's caught in my boot, Mr. Trump. And he said, well, get it out of there, honey. and I said to my wife, I said, you know, that is very unusual. And if America can see that Donald Trump tonight, I think he will walk the country with her. But if he lowers himself to these attacks, and you know, we all get it, because he's been treated incredibly unfair. You know, he's been marched in before every court. They're trying to bankrupt him. They're trying to knock him off the ballot everywhere. And yet he doesn't get any support, it seems. And he's the only one that stands up. And when he says, you know, that they're not after you, they're after, they're not after me, they're after you. I'm just in their way.
Yes. Right.
I think that resonates with America, because we are losing our country right now. And 13 to 15% of this dadgum country will get out and vote. And that's about it.
I agree with you. I think it really does resonate with the public when he says he is the one in the way. And I also know that polls show undecided voters, which is really, they may not tune in, but that's sort of who everyone is courting right now. The number one issue among them is the economy. I mean, that's true for so many people, but definitely for the undecided voters. And we don't need the personal attacks, we just need answers.
Everything is the economy. Yep. The border, international, these terrorists that we gave billions of dollars to, and currently we're still paying the Taliban every dadgum week millions of dollars, and the Democrats refuse to address that. And if you saw on the screen earlier, they showed the Democrats who were there, who were supposed to, pitching for the president, and these are far left people, far left. So that tells you one thing: they ought to already have that bunch. They should be having their moderate Democrats, if there is such a thing. But they are worried about their far left base, and they are going to throw out the far left red meat tonight, and you will see full-on Marxism like you've never seen it.
Have both of you seen the Alan Lichtman predictions?
No, I don't look at anybody's predictions.
I agree. I think, look, you've got Nate Silver saying Trump's 2-1 to win. He's nearly 65% chance to win based on the polling. But Alan Lichtman is this professor that everybody loves to cite because he predicted the last 9 of 10 elections, and he correctly predicted Trump would win in 2016. He's now predicting Kamala Harris will win. And I kind of feel like his assessment, based on what they call the keys to the White House, it's based off of watching too much MSNBC. He says there's been no major scandals. He says that whether there's been a foreign military failure or victory is kind of an unknown, an absurd. I mean, the Abby Gates scandal is massive, and it's multiple scandals in one. Not to mention the scandal of removing the primary winner on the Democratic ticket. He says the economy short-term.
They rig their own elections all the time.
Oh, it's ridiculous. He says the short-term and long-term economies are good. And he says that Donald Trump is not charismatic. So I understand there's a lot of people who don't like Trump, but the man is a reality TV star. I mean, come on.
I've been in a room with 2 people in my life that when they walk in the room, dadgum, you know who they are. One of them was Benjamin Netanyahu. I was in Israel. I thought, holy cow, that's freaking Benjamin Netanyahu. And the other one's Donald J. Trump. There's no question. When that guy walks in the room, it's who he is and what he does and what he's done. So, I beg to differ with the liberal pollsters. There was a guy that used to work for me, and I know he's not watching now, so I can say this, but he used to work for me, and he would make these predictions. He would say, this is going to happen, and everybody'd say, oh. And, he would never hit it. And then one time he would hit it, and that's all they'd focus on. I bet that guy had never picked a dadgum dog catcher's race, and he's lucked up on a few presidential races. And that's what the national media, that's how they focus on these cats, and they call them experts. And they wouldn't hit a lick in a dadgum pie factory, after hours. They're not worthy of national news, but that is what the national news focuses on, brother. And it just shows you just how sick this country is and where we're headed.
I think the national news has a warped perspective on all of this. I was listening to a report from 538's podcast, and they were talking about how in 2016, after every debate, Hillary Clinton gained in the polls. She performed better and better. But if you remember 2016, we got some of the best Trump lines during the debates of all time. I think there is a bias towards Trump as the outsider and also a personality we don't like. And therefore, no matter what, no one is interested in him. And that just ultimately proved to be false. I mean, they'll point back to the Comey emails and stuff like that and say, well, that's why she lost. But I just don't think that's the case. And I think similarly right now, they're all saying Trump is going to be this brash, over the top, wired guy. And I thought he was pretty controlled and calculated during the debate with Biden. I mean, they really have no way of accurately judging his ability to perform.
They're going to be muting the mics. They're not going to be interrupting each other. She's not going to get her little, I'm talking, sir. I'm talking. And we're going to see Kamala, just like we did with Biden, on how terrible of a speaker she is, on terrible points she has. Her policy is bad because Trump's not going to be he's not going to be able to interrupt her. So we're going to be able to clear her fully and clearly on how terrible her policies are. And she's going to lose a lot of points after today.
Yeah, I think they were relying on a Trump that, again, I don't think necessarily is guaranteed to show up. He knows how to stay disciplined. I mean, that was one of the best parts of the Biden debate, which is that he let Biden expose himself by just standing there and letting it happen. And I think he can do it again. It's just a question of if she can get under his skin. And I hope not.
Right. Well, and the difference is the policy. President Trump had the most secure border that we've had in nearly 50 years. He had a record economy. We had people were buying homes. We were energy independent. We were energy secure. We were pursuing energy dominance, and we were able to prosper. And if you look at the issues, like Burchett said, they are the Biden policies that she is also responsible for. And no one can say because she was the vice president, she didn't have a final say in these policies, because she was also the tie-breaking vote in the Senate for the Inflation Reduction Act. And even Joe Biden, he had a gaffe the other day, most truth I've heard from him in a while. He said the Inflation Reduction Act, and he's talking about all the Green New Deal policies and the over $350 billion that we spent there for renewable energy that's very unreliable. But he said the Inflation Reduction Act and the Green New Deal, we should have called it what it was. It was never supposed to reduce inflation. But also, Kamala Harris was the tie-breaking vote on the infrastructure bill. And all of that money, that 9% of $1.2 trillion that actually went towards infrastructure. She was the border czar. The media has completely discounted that. Said she was never the border czar. She absolutely was. And we have more than 10 million illegal aliens who have come into our country. I was just sitting with a candidate for Congress and a former ICE regional director for all of Colorado and Wyoming, and former ICE director Tom Homan and Congressman Chip Roy. And we were in Aurora, Colorado, where the Tren de Aragua gangs are taking over apartment complexes, and they are assaulting people, sending them to the hospital. They are extorting them for their rent payments. And this is coming into every community. And you just said, Tim, a little bit ago, talking about this, there are no scandals to point to. And Abbygate is absolutely the greatest scandal that we've had. 13 American soldiers that lost their life. And the American press in this year, April of this year, says that the suicide bombing and at the Kabul airport that killed U.S. troops in Afghanistan in August of 2021 was not preventable. And that's straight bullshit. We know that was preventable. And right then, Joe Biden and his entire administration displayed weakness on the world stage. And we have seen all of these wars come up because of that. And Kamala Harris has been right there with him.
The shocking thing about the Abbygate scandal is it's several scandals in one. Mm-hmm. First, the initial bombing itself, the loss of life, followed by the Biden checking his watch at the ceremony, followed by them being invited to honor these fallen soldiers at Arlington Cemetery, and they did not show. Biden nor Kamala came. And on top of this, the press insulted and attacked Donald Trump for having gone at the invite of the families. That one really disgusted me.
Yes.
They didn't show up. That was bad enough. But the media attacked Trump for accepting an invitation.
Right.
If I could say something to that, I was on the committee that we some investigation foreign affairs, which issued the report. The telling part about all that was, to me, and it shows you the mood and the intelligence of this administration, was the Marine sniper had that guy, the suicide bomber, not once but twice. They had identified the guy. They identified his clothing, facial recognition. They had what he was carrying a bag, and they knew who he was. He was stepping off. He was marching. He was walking through. It was very unusual. And they didn't have him once but twice. And he was refused. As I've stated many times, they call him military intelligence. Military intelligence is a lot like congressional ethics. Brother, it does not exist. It doesn't exist. And this guy, he was there yesterday at the press conference. He's blown to hell, lost a leg, part of his arm. You know, it's just a disgrace. And this administration, their State Department, is completely responsible for that. The blood of those 13 Americans is on their hands. Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, she bragged about being the last person in the room with Joe before he made the decision, or whatever that decision was. President Trump had a workable plan, and there was checks and balances in there. If they didn't do something, we weren't pulling this group out. If they didn't do that, they just said we're out, and they were hell bent. And Americans are still over there. That's the dirty little secret. So
Americans and a lot of supplies.
Yeah,
right?
and our allies that we promised $86 billion, and they said, well, and they flippantly said, well, they can't fly those helicopters. Well, I tell you who can. The dadgum communist Chinese who were there that day, getting them, showing them how, and arming all of our enemies all over the world.
There's also reports that some of those weapons are falling into the hands of Iranians.
That's exactly where it's going. Absolutely.
Yes.
Should we have our newcomer introduce himself?
That's a fact.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, good evening. Congressman Scott Perry from the great Commonwealth of Pennsylvania.
Right on.
It's a big
Awesome
night for
to be
you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Big night for everybody.
Scott Perry was my chairman in the House Freedom Caucus, so honored to be joined by Mr. Perry here. And this is someone, a two-star general who. You're about to get your other one? I thought you were about to get your third. See,
Don't pull a waltz over here.
I talk more highly of you than I ought to, I guess.
Yeah, be careful.
All right. Well, he's never done it. I have. But anyway, this is a general here who has really laid down a life of service for, I think, another step in serving our country, and he does an excellent job to keep us on the conservative talking points and messaging and policy, because that's what's really going to affect change, especially here in this town.
Well, maybe you can tell us what talking points you want to hear from Donald Trump tonight, if you're keeping everyone on message.
Well, from Pennsylvania, I will tell you, I think what's the most important, I'm in ground zero, the 10th district, swing district. Trump must win Pennsylvania, and the people that I talk to every single day tell me about their grocery bills, their gasoline, their electricity, daycare, education. They can't afford a new home. Many young people have moved back to their people. I talked to a lady at the doctor's office. She said, look, I make good money here. I have another job. I make good money. I still had to move back in with my parents because I can't afford it. I think that's what the president needs to focus on, because people in Pennsylvania, and I think people around the country, can't afford the Biden, Harris, Waltz, the leftist agenda in their economic lives. They literally can't afford to live in their country anymore. And I think that the president obviously has to draw that contrast. When he was the president, everybody was making money. Everybody saw opportunity. The things were looking up for everybody. I mean, the people at the bottom of the socioeconomic spectrum, at the bottom of the money ladder, saw a way out. And I lived most of my life there, so I know what that means. And to draw the contrast between then and now, I think that's what the president has to do. And the other thing is safety. People don't feel safe in our community. I don't care where you live. There was a lady killed just close to our town, close to our community. She was out on a rail trail. Some person here that was here illegally took that lady's life. And so people are afraid to go out of their homes. When I grew up in the same town, we used to leave our car keys in the car. We left our front door unlocked. Now people are scared to go out in their own town. And then you look at the world situation, you got wars going on, you got saber rattling going on. People are afraid whether you buy a new F-150 or a toaster, they all have a chip in it. If Taiwan is taken over by China, we're not going to be able to, you're not going to be able to live the life that you live right now in the 21st century. And that's because these policies being projected or being instituted by Harris, Biden, Walz, the left, are destroying our country. And that's where I think he needs to stay. That's where I think he needs to stay.
I'm curious your guys' opinions on the SAVE Act being attached to the continuing resolution.
You want me to start?
Go ahead.
Okay, so look, I don't love the continuing resolution because essentially we're saying that we're going to vote for spending and the amount of spending and the priorities that we voted against in the past. But we know how Washington works. And so, unfortunately, while I don't like that, this is the only tactical play that we can make that stops the December omnibus. So understand how this works. What Chuck Schumer and the people on his staff that are literally going to write the spending bill that determine how every 350 million Americans' taxes are going to be spent. That's all done in Chuck Schumer's office, and they love to do that, and we don't have any say in it. All the Democrats will vote for that. Half the Republicans will, because you either vote for that or you get accused of shutting down the government. So they're setting up this circumstance. The only way to stop that is to put the CR on the floor that pays for government for the next 6 months into March, but put something on it that the American people want and understand, which is the SAVE Act, which all that says is that people that vote in federal elections must be American citizens and states must verify it. When you do that and send that to the Senate, and here's the important point, when we send that to the Senate, we must leave town. We must leave town, so the Senate has no other option to either
but
take
do you think
that.
We will?
This really sounds like I'm talking to a general. He's like, here is
Right.
our battle plan.
Well, that's
This is
right.
the plan. Yes,
All of you
yes.
better have your tickets booked.
Yes,
Right.
yes.
Leave town, take it. So then the narrative becomes, because the Senate will say, this is garbage. We don't want to, the House is mucking it up and they're confusing things and we should just fund the government. The Senate will be in the position of explaining to the American people why they don't want to fund the government so that illegals can vote in their election. Right. Make them explain that to the American people. So I don't love the circumstances, but this is look when the Confederates came on to Gettysburg looking for shoes and ran into the Union Army, they didn't like the circumstances either. But you got to fight on the battlefield that you're on, and this is the battlefield we're on. So let's get after it and win the battle.
Right. I think Lauren's about to.
Yeah, so I'm going to leave. And, with the continuing resolution, I'm still working through some of that. I've never voted for a CR. I don't think Scott Perry's ever voted for a CR, or maybe one with a border plan or something attached to it. But with this debate, I just want people to be focused on the border and the economy more than anything. Chip Roy has put out an amazing 37-page PDF on the detailed instances with the border, talking about the 10 million illegal aliens that have come in, talking about the 100,000 of Americans that have been killed by fentanyl poisoning, talking about the amount of tax dollars that's going towards health care. I know Denver Health has spent $42 million, another $74 million for housing and other benefits. We've defunded 9% of our Denver law enforcement to take care of illegal aliens. And all of this is on Biden Harris, because they are the ones who opened up the border. And if we want to be able to afford to live again, well, we have to shut down the border, stop funding the illegal aliens who are here, and have Congress actually get in control of the purse strings once again. We are the most powerful branch of government. And, I've heard it said that someone went to one of our Supreme Court justices and said, I'm thinking about bringing you a lawsuit about this agency because, they're really abusing their powers and this and that. The bureaucrats are trying to make laws and all this, and wanted to bring a case before the Supreme Court. And the justice responded to the senator who was saying this to him and said, I'm so tired of you guys bringing me cases. If you don't like what these agencies are doing, don't fund them. So that's where we are right now. We have the power of the purse. We hold those purse strings. And if we don't like what these agencies are doing, whether it's the Department of Justice and going after their political opponents and persecuting them like they have President Trump, like they have Steve Bannon and Peter Navarro and our January 6th protesters and all this, well, don't fund them. If we don't like what the Department of Homeland Security is doing and Secretary Mayorkas and abusing their powers and not keeping our country safe, well, don't fund them. If we don't like what the Department of Education is doing in promoting transgenderism to our children and causing this confusion and sexualizing them, don't fund them. So that's where I am right now with all of this spending that's going underway here in D.C. Stop funding the chaos and the madness.
How do they keep getting funded?
Well, that would be right now it's a divided government, right? Where the Senate has seemingly more power because we haven't taken a stand. And so the Senate sends us a crap bill, and it ends up getting voted on by the Democrats and a few Republicans who are afraid. And then it gets signed into law by Joe Biden. But we need to take a stand to the point of shutdown. And honestly, if the CR with the SAVE Act was actually going to be something that we fought for to the bitter end, then I would be more for it. But right now I'm still deciding that because I've seen so many white surrender flags saying, oh, well, we'll pass it, but we know we're going to get something else. So, I don't know if we're really going to fight all the way to a shutdown. So I'm having a little bit of struggles with that, and we'll see what goes
You're making
down
me nervous. United Front.
We'll see what goes down on the floor tomorrow. But I'll see y'all later. We got Andrew Clyde from Georgia coming up, taking my place. So God bless y'all.
While he's jumping in, Rep. Burchett, what do you think?
I think it's a bad idea. We've already passed the SAVE Act. We know what's going to happen. Biden, Schumer's not going to touch it. All this is going to do, everything we're trying to force them to do to make a decision, they've already done it. The legacy media is not going to beat up on them. We're not going to do anything with it. They'll send it back a clean bill, and then we'll end up passing another CR, which is a CR by definition, continued resolution, just continuing the bad spending policies that we've had in the past. All the woke stuff that we hate, they're forcing all of us conservatives to vote for. And yet they've already voted against the SAVE Act. They'll vote against it again, and nothing will happen. But we will be on record, and I'll guarantee you'll see that in elections.
And I think that's important that you go back to your district saying, this is what I did. It looked like you wanted to say something, and then maybe we can have our newcomers introduce themselves.
Look, Lauren's not wrong. My good friend from Tennessee, Tim, is not wrong. We have a crisis of confidence here. Because our leadership has left us hanging so many times. But as another friend of mine who's sitting out in front of me said one time, courage is contagious. And I will just tell you this is why I didn't say just vote for the CR with the SAVE Act attached to it and stand there. Vote for the CR with the SAVE Act attached to it and then leave, denying the Senate the battlefield. You must deny them the battlefield so they can send over anything they want to.
What a great slogan.
We won't be present. We won't be present to vote on their piece of trash. Yeah. And they can just suck it down like they always force us to do because we have people that are weak and feckless.
Yeah.
That's what has to happen.
It's a fascinating plan. Do we want our two congressmen who've joined us to introduce themselves?
Sure. I'm Andrew Clyde, Georgia's 9th District. I've been in Congress since 2021. And
I'm glad you could join us.
well, thank you.
And this is a familiar face.
Yeah, Troy Neal's great state of Texas, the envy of the world. Texas 22nd Congressional District, Southwest Houston.
Do you guys have any predictions for the debate tonight? What are you expecting from Kamala Harris? What are you expecting from Trump?
Well, I think word salads are probably on the menu tonight. And the only question is going to be, is it a house salad or a Caesar salad? So I think that's definitely what we're going to... This is going to be Kamala Harris's very first press conference. And it's going to be unscripted. The country's going to see what she really is like. And they've been trying to hide her now for 2 months. And I think the country's going to have a epiphany, kind of like they did during the Biden-Trump debate of a few months earlier.
It is amazing, 52 days without any kind of direct media contact other than when she's chaperoned by good old Timmy. No offense to the other Tims in the room.
A couple of them.
Congressman Nelson, do you have any predictions?
Yeah, I think she's going to talk, but she's not going to say a whole lot.
Right.
I think she's not going to talk much about any policy. She's going to let the American people know how great she was as the Attorney General and how she saved San Francisco and the great state of California. She's going to talk about how great of an Attorney General, law and order, going to lock up the criminals. So she's not going to talk a whole lot about any real true substance because there's really nothing for her to talk about. She could talk about her family. She could talk about growing up and pursuing the American dream and all the odds she was up against. She can mention Willie Brown, but she's going to talk about those things and not a whole lot of real important policy.
I think it's going to be interesting. This will be the first time she'll be confronted on Trump's Project 2025 with Trump himself, who's easily going to say, that's not my plan. I have nothing to do with it. She keeps saying that. That's not correct.
Yeah, it's amazing how much that is a part of her policy platform. I mean, every single tab has some kind of connection to 2025, which Trump has, distanced himself from and confronted it many times. I have to say, you have Donald Trump hugging the flag on your tie right now. So I think we know.
Oh, I got something.
There are accessories that go with this. Oh my gosh, you have the Trump gold shoes.
Whoa, you got some of those?
Tim, you don't have a pair of those, do you?
No, I don't. I'd like a
didn't
pair of
think
those.
so, huh?
I want to skate in them.
Let me tell you, they're tough to get.
I believe you.
Tough to get.
Did you win a poker game or something?
I could tell you all that.
So you guys have how many days left? There's only like 18 voting days in September, right, for Congress?
Something like that, yeah. Is it 18? I thought it was
18.
I thought it was
3
less
weeks
than that.
at 4 days. I don't know about 18.
I think it's less than
Less
that.
than that?
Less
About
than that.
12.
And so
11 days. No, 10. You're at 10.
10?
10 days.
Okay, bye. I guess we'll see you never. So in addition to the CR with the SAVE Act, are there any big objectives that you have? The general's already ready.
Well, no, I was just, since you counted the days, ergo, my plan of voting for the CR with the SAVE Act and leave town and deny the battlefield.
Right.
Congress doesn't do a lot of huge things right before a general election. They don't want to rock the boat, never do. So I don't think you're going to see anything earth-shattering, certainly not anything that's going to set up a fight with the Senate, run by Chuck Schumer, which everything we do should be a fight, set up as a fight with the Senate.
Right.
So, no, I don't expect any. Look, this debate is going to set the stage. I think you're going to see the living version of virtual reality in Kamala Harris. I think that she is going to be highly scripted. She's going to say, I'm speaking. She's going to have a couple one-liners, and they're going to try and soundbite through this thing. I don't think they're going to let her do word salad. I think she's going to be highly scripted. You're going to believe that she has a teleprompter in front of her and she's not real, because she's not real. I mean, Bernie Sanders said the quiet part out loud, right? Mm-hmm. That she's just saying whatever she has to say to get elected. She is true to her values, but all leftists and socialists can't tell the American people that because the people don't like that. So she's going to stand up there, say what she's got to say, try and be sincere about it, and it's going to be like a award-winning act.
I just love how desperate the Kamala camp was to have the microphones turned on so she could do the "I'm speaking" thing.
Right. That's
Right.
yeah,
The
that's
Mike
her
Pence
thing,
meeting.
right? Yeah.
That's all they have.
And now what they're doing is, apparently I've heard they're going to put journalists as close to the stage as possible so that if Trump does say something while she's speaking, they can still try and get the "I'm speaking" narrative going.
Right. That's her thing. Yeah.
That's
So
her
you're
thing.
going to see that.
I was listening to this analysis of her past debate performances, and they said during 2020 there was one primary debate where she did particularly well. And remember, it's primary. There were a ton of Democrats at the time, but she was pushing back on Joe Biden's stance from the 1970s on segregated busing.
Right.
And she said
called
this
him a
story.
racist.
Right. She called him a racist, and she surged in the polls. But she has now aligned herself with this person she called a racist. So, what emotional tactic does she have left? I mean,
No,
she's
Dick
really
Cheney-
run out of stuff from her bag of tricks.
You're a linear thinker. You're thinking if I said this today, then I can't unsay it tomorrow. Democrats and the left don't ever think that way. They say whatever is expedient at this moment, and if something contradicts it completely the next moment, that's fine with them personally, and it's fine with their party and their voters. That's the unfortunate thing for conservatives and people that actually think logically. That blows our mind. But they have no compunction about lying straight-faced to the American people and acting like it's the truth.
So are you expecting her to just distance herself as much as possible from the Biden-Harris administration?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I do expect her to just act like she had nothing to do with it. She wasn't the last person in the room for Afghanistan, had nothing to do with any of these decisions. I'm just the vice president.
I don't even know that guy.
How does she answer these questions when Trump says, "Do it now"? She says, "Oh, we want to fix the economy. We're going to cut taxes for the middle class. We're going to X, Y, and Z." And Trump says, "Okay, do it now."
Well,
how does she respond to that?
I'll tell you that they're trying to craft the narrative that she is somehow this new individual just showing up on the scene. She's the incumbent. I mean, this is the vice president of the United States. She was the last person in the room when Joe Biden made all those terrible decisions. She owns those decisions, no different than Joe Biden owns those decisions. So, to say that anything different, I think, is just completely false. And, the general's right when you say that they'll say anything, they'll change their narrative, whatever fits the moment. It's the ends justify the means for the Democrats. And the mainstream media simply will not hold them accountable for that. If right for that moment, and they think that they can, snow some voter, they'll say whatever they want to say.
They're right on it.
And they won't be held accountable for it. And that's a massive problem. The voter needs to be educated, and I think tonight's going to be a great education for the voter. I hope everybody tunes in to listen to it, because you're going to see Kamala Harris with no real policy positions that she can defend.
Yeah, I
Well-
think she won't be able to.
She hasn't been able to defend anything right now.
right.
She's, well, it depends what poll you listen to. I mean, she's within the margin of error in a lot of these. I don't know. There's going to have to be a breakout moment in this debate, I think, for people to really pay attention. I don't know. But what we do know is I don't think the American people really know who she is, because she's just really done nothing in 3.5 years but continue to destroy this country under Joe Biden. But we have 60 days to define her. We've got several $100 million in the bank. And over the airwaves over the next 60 days, we will define her. If you look at that ACLU, that little survey she took back in 2019, and I've got it on my phone, she says, "I make a pledge. I'm going to end immigrant detention." That means we're not locking up anybody. How do you think the American people feel about that? "I'm going to fund taxpayer-funded gender care and transition surgeries for detained immigrants." You just put those things out there. This was her survey back in the ACLU. So I think once we get that out on the airwaves, the broadcast, and we hammer her, I mean, she's not too bright. She isn't. She's not too bright. She's very, I think she has a very limited bandwidth. I think Trump wins the debate, but there's going to have to be some type of a blockbuster moment because the media will capture 30 seconds of her doing something well during debate, and that's all they'll play.
I think we need to make sure that I understand the talking point of she hasn't done anything because the country has not improved. The economy is not doing well. But I prefer to say she's done a lot. Kamala Harris has done a tremendous amount of things to this country. She cast the tie-breaking votes in the Senate, which means all of the policies that have backfired or failed are her personal accomplishments. If not for her, I mean, she could have shut these things down. It came down to her as a tie-breaking vote in the Senate. She decided we will roll with these things, and they have failed. So when people are wondering why LL Flooring, Big Lots, other big chain stores are filing for bankruptcy, shutting down, why they can't walk to a Walgreens anymore to get their prescriptions, you can ask Kamala Harris about why she thought the Inflation Reduction Act or any of these policies they pushed forward were effective, and why would we assume she's going to do anything different if she were to win the presidency?
Yeah. What I was saying there is she's not going to talk a lot about her accomplishments because she hasn't accomplished anything, and if she has, they've been failures.
If she's a Marxist and her goal is to destroy America, she's accomplished a lot. There you go.
Yeah.
Well, her values have never changed, so she doesn't have to defend anything. She's an interesting character because she presents, or at least people are acting as if she is both very experienced and also the underdog newcomer. I mean, I've heard several interviews with undecided voters who say, oh, well, Trump's got this brash personality, and I don't know about this, that, or the other. But we don't actually know anything about Kamala Harris, so we don't know if we can vote for her. I mean, it's almost worse that she has both been a high-profile AG in the Senate and the VP, and the American people still do not think they know this person. That's not, how can you run an election like that?
Simultaneously positioned as the incumbent and the complete outsider and brand new fresh face. Mm-hmm. And that's
very strange.
That's how they're marketing her.
They're trying to target every possible algorithmic demographic. I wonder if the reason we notice this is that as people who are involved in actively, such as yourselves in Congress, or those of us who pay attention heavily to the news, we can see each and every soundbite and every bit of garbage. I wonder if the strategy that they're using is upload 10 different ads. Each political ad represents something contradictory, but let the Google and Facebook algorithms send those ads to the appropriate people. So you'll get some 60-year-old grandma, and she sees this Kamala Harris showing the border wall saying we want security. And then at the same time, an ad will appear for a 25-year-old where she says, protect our migrants and refugees. Seemingly contradictory. Not 100%, but contradictory enough. I wonder if I'm just speculating because I don't know there's any evidence to suggest this, but I feel like we'll at least get to that point where politicians will just say, look, if I'm going to run an ad on social media and Google's going to decide to send an ad to only a bunch of grandmothers, I can say whatever I want because they'll never see me be pro sex change operations for immigrants. And then they can send that one to the woke leftist young people, and they'll never see her saying build the wall.
I don't know, Tim. I think there's plenty of evidence to suggest that that's exactly what's been happening and will happen. I think there's a lot of evidence to suggest that. If you're not watching the Weaponization Committee's hearings on censorship and how they throttle and monitor and make sure that only you see certain things, making sure you see certain things is by transposition saying that you don't see other things, and that's exactly what you're talking about.
Well, I'll give you a big one. We had Dr. Robert Epstein on the show, and he said that, I believe it was Facebook. I want to be careful here because I believe he was talking about Facebook. On Election Day, they send 100% of Democrats. So he's tracking Democrats and Republicans. 100% of Democrats received a don't forget to vote notification on their profiles, and only around 65 to 70% of Republicans got the same thing. That is massive, massive voter manipulation.
Sure.
And they can feign ignorance and just say, oh, we don't know it's an algorithm.
I mean, there was a reason that everyone was sort of semi-praising Mark Zuckerberg when he came out and said, oh, I'm not going to endorse this year, and we're going to try and keep Facebook neutral. The American public is aware that social media is manipulated, but it's woven into the fabric of their daily lives in a way that they also can't turn it off. And
right.
I find that to be sort of troubling. It's like we're aware that there's corruption, but also sort of dependent on the corruption.
We're accepting
anyways.
of it, right? We just baked it into our daily lives, and we think that we can rise above the subliminal messaging that's constantly trying to manipulate our thoughts and our actions. And many of us, we have our own minds and we act accordingly. But there's a lot of people. Look, people have a lot going on. They're dealing with the bills they can't pay. They're dealing with their family issues, work issues, and they're not. People say, "Well, I don't get into politics. I just want to live my life." Yes, we know, but politics gets into you. But they don't think about it in those terms that every day. Every moment that I'm looking at this, if somebody's trying to manipulate me, they don't think of it in those terms.
I think it's a big wake-up call for people. The mass illegal migration crisis, with many Democrat voters in big cities now seeing the repercussions. But sorry, you were going to say something.
Yeah, you can see that it's the policy decisions of the current administration that is negatively affecting the lives of every solitary American, whether it's inflation. And yes, Kamala Harris was the deciding vote on the Inflation Reduction Act, which actually did the exact opposite of what it said, or the American Rescue Plan, which didn't rescue America at all. I mean, those two things, she owns that. And if she doesn't know what's in it, I'm sorry, she's responsible for it because she voted for it. She was the one to make sure it passed the Senate. All right. But from inflation to an unsecure border, to the crime that has come from that. I mean, my hometown's Athens, Georgia. That's where Laken Riley was brutally murdered by an illegal alien from Guatemala. From Venezuela.
Who was known to the Biden administration.
Right, known, and not only that, that person came in the parole program, through the parole program of the Biden administration. He owns that. She owns that 100%. She's not putting illegal aliens in jail. She's not deporting them. She owns that.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of scandals from the Biden administration, I mean, he called her Lincoln during the State of the Union address.
Exactly.
There are so many flippant moments that I feel like both Biden and Harris demonstrate consistently that they don't really care about the American people. Mm-hmm. And I know, you could get an independent voter who says, well, all politicians either side of the aisle are only in it for themselves. But, I just don't think that a conservative or a libertarian treats Americans the way that Democrats do. They expect compliance, they give you fear, and they continue to say, well, we're doing what's best for us and not for you.
Well, before I leave, and I got to run here, but I think Andrew's right, and I think you're right, ma'am. And I think the shining example is the young service members that lost their lives at the Abbey Gate, knowing that all this time later, they haven't been contacted. The administration hasn't offered their condolences, nothing. And I think even if it's your family and your family member that was lost in a time of war, it is hard to resist a call or an engagement with the President of the United States, even though you might disagree with the policy. It's just hard to resist that. But even if it is in their best interest, and I think it would be in the best interest politically for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris to talk to these families, they simply, literally do not care about them. It is the ultimate disgrace. As a lead, it's commander-in-chief, right? You're not wearing the uniform, but you're in charge of the uniformed services, and to have your service members die on the battlefield and then refuse to acknowledge that significant loss, that to me, that disqualifies you completely to be the commander-in-chief and to be the president or the vice president of the United States. But with that, thank you for the opportunity. It's awesome to hang out with you.
But the iconic photo of that, all right, was when those 13 service members, flag-draped caskets, came to Dover Air Base. What did you see? You saw the president, the commander-in-chief, looking at his watch going, what time is it? I need to be out of here. I've been here too long.
Yeah. I have to go to Delaware now.
I have to go on vacation. I've got to do something else. I don't want to be here. That's what it says.
Those service members didn't have any more time.
Right. They did not.
Thank you so much for joining us, General.
That one really, really, really pisses me off.
As a combat veteran, that infuriated me.
And then Psaki ran cover for him. I mean, they all sort of tried to say, no, it's the wrong angle, and actually he was. I don't even know what they tried to claim. I mean, this is the failure of the media in my eyes, which is everyone will have a person they prefer to vote for. But you should be honest when it comes to the American people and be honest when they have let those people down.
Right. It took Mike Johnson today in that gold medal ceremony, the first time those 13 families ever heard an apology from the United States government was this morning when Speaker Johnson apologized to them for the failures of this government in protecting their service members. It's the gold medal ceremony was an incredible ceremony. I think it helped at least a little bit in the healing process for these families. But for that to be the very first time is a disgrace, and it just shows you the failure in leadership of this particular administration, and the entire world sees it.
I agree. Part of it is Joe Biden during his State of the Union said we haven't had any military deaths while I've been in office, and you just want to scream. I mean, in fact, we did have a family member of one of the 13 who was taken out of the room.
That's exactly right.
Because
that's right. Right behind us.
At least somebody was in there to hold them accountable. I mean, the fact that this would be a scandal-free administration is just a blatant lie.
How disgusting is that for Joe Biden to have said that in the presence of this man.
Yeah, but when the dishonest media provides cover for them, and they have,
They're just as
and what they'll
culpable.
do is they'll totally flip it, and they'll talk about President Trump saying something about veterans being suckers and this and that, which he never said. So the dishonest media, they're not journalists anymore, they're activists. They're activists, and I think most of the American people really can't trust what the media says today. You can't believe what you see on TV or read or what you hear on the radio. But I tell you, I'm remaining optimistic. I think Donald Trump is going to do well in the debate tonight.
Yep.
I spent a lot of time in the state of Wisconsin over the last month, and the left is going to tell you, the women, they don't want Donald Trump, they don't like Donald Trump. We had a lot of women say, we love Donald Trump, we're going to support him, we're going to vote for him. A lot of young people registering voters in the state of Wisconsin. I was there last weekend, had a big rally in Mosinine. I tell you, there's a lot of energy in the state of Wisconsin. We win Wisconsin, we win Pennsylvania, we win this thing. And I got to have faith and confidence in our electorate that they're smart enough to see these two candidates. We've got a doofus over here that really hasn't accomplished anything but destruction versus a former president that when he ran this country, we were on cruise control. We didn't have any crises under Donald Trump other than COVID, right? Compared to what we see today. So I think this is a no-brainer for the American people. It's a no-brainer.
We are about 4.5 minutes out from the debate beginning. So it's starting to get.
Can I say real quick? Sure, we had R.I.P. to all the 13 service members for Afghanistan, the debacle, the surrender. What Ian says, surrendered. Well, we also had 3 service members killed in Jordan for a drone attack.
That's right.
So we have a grand total of 16, not just 13. So 16 have died under Joe Biden's watch.
And those 3 service members were from the state of Georgia,
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
from my state. You know, what I want the American people to understand and to know, that it's policy that matters. It's truly policy that will it's either good policy or bad policy. Inflation, a secure border, which leads to a secure nation, or an unsecure border, which is a nation in peril. You have increasing crime. You have lack of energy independence, all related to policies. But what do the Democrats want to concentrate on? Personality. It's policy, not personality.
Right.
But I'll tell you, there is one place that personality makes a difference, and it makes a difference just as much as policy, and that's when you're sitting across the table from an enemy on the world stage. When you're sitting across the table from Vladimir Putin or Xi Jinping or Little Rocket Man, all right, or Hamas or the Houthis, Hezbollah or Iran, that's where personality makes a difference. And on the world stage, Donald Trump is not only respected, he's feared.
Yep.
And that's a beautiful thing.
Andrew, you're absolutely right. And I tell some of those that are concerned about his name calling, I said, listen, this is an election for president. We're not electing the Pope. This isn't a race for Pope, right? This is an election for the President of the United States, and he was the greatest thing, and the greatest president in my lifetime. And again, I think the American people are smarter than that. You're absolutely right.
Yep.
Let's focus on the policy.
Yep.
Of
I
these
think
individuals.
that is the key to the debate tonight. And I think part of it is, Harris can only focus on personality because she has nothing else to offer.
Right.
And even then, I don't really think she has a personality. I mean, how many times do you have to copy a pop star in your campaign ads and slogans to tell me that you're not original? I mean, there is a reason the MAGA hat is iconic. She's just trying to rip off what she thinks young voters are interested in. I think you guys are
Thank
both
you.
getting tapped out. But it's been so nice to have you here.
We are
Appreciate it.
3 minutes and counting till the debate begins.
Mr. Mills, you're about to say something?
Tim, it's good to see you again. I'll see about getting you a pair of shoes.
Oh, I want a pair
It's
of those
tough.
shoes.
I'd have to come back out and see you, though.
Come back out, man.
I know it.
Yeah, come
All
back
right.
out.
You have to
Bring some
see our
shoes.
new
Thank you for what you
studio.
do. God bless you guys. Thank
Appreciate it.
you.
Thanks for joining us.
And we have a newcomer to the stage. They'll have
Couple.
to. Oh, we have a couple.
Oh,
they'll have to
We
introduce
got
ourselves.
2.5 minutes, so come and introduce yourselves.
I'm Andy Harris. I'm a representative from Maryland. I'm one of the chairman of one of the appropriations subcommittees and a member of the Freedom Caucus.
You're the better Harris tonight.
That's right. My cousin. Don't vote for her.
So this got to be Western Maryland then.
No, Eastern.
Really?
Those are the only two conservative parts.
wow.
The very Western
All right,
and
I
the
like
very
it.
Eastern.
And what about the
Eastern
gentleman sitting
Shore.
next to you?
So Congressman Andy Ogles from Tennessee. So I've got part of Nashville and then mostly, so I'm southern middle Tennessee.
Right on. Well, you guys got 2 minutes. What do you think's about to happen?
Well, I think it's going to be a train wreck is what it's going to be. I mean, I think
for that.
Harris wanted the mics on so she could, she's a former prosecutor, so she wanted to nag him, get under his skin, get him flustered, get him mad so that he would say something, kind of out of character or inflammatory. But now that the mics are going to be muted, it's a different game plan. And so as long as he sticks to the script and focuses on the issues, when you look at the contrast, this is over. We win.
Yeah, and look, she's like Joe Biden. She needs notes. I mean, I don't know how she's going to do this without notes. I mean, this is not. She is not the sharpest knife in the drawer.
Are their aides allowed to talk to them during commercial breaks? With Biden, they weren't allowed to.
It's too late. I mean, commercial breaks are too late. This is back and forth. If you're not on your toes, you don't know what's going on. It's going to be. She has the potential to be really sad tonight. That's all I can tell you.
Well, Donald Trump's a guy who can talk forever.
Yes.
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah.
She's going to unburden what has been, so we'll find out.
No,
She's a very.
she's going to unburden Democrats from what their preconceptions of her have been.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I think
no. Their preconceptions are correct.
Right?
I mean, they know that she's could do very badly tonight.
Well, she's going to talk, but say nothing. And there's going to be a lot of scripted statements that are supposed to sound profound so that the woke mainstream media can interpret them. And look, they've set the bar so low. As long as she doesn't fall asleep up there and she's breathing, she will have exceeded expectations. She will have done better than Joe Biden. And so that's the story tomorrow, is that she exceeded expectations.
I'm gonna say this just for the sound bite. I think she'll do a little better than people expect. That way, if she does perform well, I'll be like, see, I told you.
That's right.
Because everybody's coming out saying Trump's going to crush her. She's going to fail miserably. And there's a possibility that she does better than we expect. And a lot of people are going to say, okay, well, she did better than we expect, right?
I mean, this
we'll
is
see.
a former United States prosecutor. The fact that she's, her team had put out a statement saying, well, actually, Donald Trump is a very seasoned debater and he's done so many and it's very different. They're trying to distance herself from any responsibility. Theoretically, she made her job out of arguing. I mean, she built her career on arguing. What do you mean you can't handle this?
Yeah.
That's right.
For the soundbite, Kamala is going to win the debate.
You guys are just trying to be rebellious tonight.
I tweeted twice that she'll win a 49-state landslide. Because what you do is, on Twitter, there was this guy who accurately predicted some Super Bowl in the final play and how it was going to go down. And everyone's like, how did he predict this a year in advance? It's because he tweeted like 300 things. Yeah. And then one by one deleted them all. So
he's like, wow, I'm so good at this.
That's right.
The ABC News debate is beginning.
And around the world tonight. Vice President Kamala Harris and President Donald Trump are just moments away from taking the stage in this unprecedented race for president.
And I'm Lindsay Davis. Tonight's meeting could be the most consequential event of their campaigns, with Election Day now less than 2 months away. For Vice President Kamala Harris, this is her first debate since President Biden withdrew from the race on July 21st. Of course, that decision followed his debate against President Donald Trump in June. Since then, this race has taken on an entirely new dynamic.
And that brings us to the rules of tonight's debate. 90 minutes with 2 commercial breaks. No topics or questions have been shared with the campaigns. Sure. The candidates will have 2 minutes to answer questions, and this is the clock. That's what they'll be seeing. 2 minutes for rebuttals and 1 minute for follow-ups, clarifications, or responses. Their microphones will only be turned on when it's their turn to speak. No pre-written notes allowed. There is no audience here tonight in this hall at the National Constitution Center. This is an intimate setting for 2 candidates who have never met.
President Trump won the coin toss. He chose to deliver the final closing statement of the evening. Vice President Harris selected the podium to the right.
So let's now welcome the candidates to the stage. Vice President Kamala Harris and President Donald Trump.
Do you think we'll get a handshake between the two of them?
Gotta do it. Come on, it's only right. Oh, Trump
She's
said
going
no.
for it.
Oh, okay.
It
looks like Trump was not.
Thank you.
Have fun.
Welcome
Trump
to you
wasn't
both.
gonna do
It's
it.
wonderful to have you. It's an honor to have you both here tonight.
Good evening. We are looking forward to a spirited and thoughtful debate.
So let's get started. I want to begin tonight with the issue that voters repeatedly say is their number one issue, and that is the economy and the cost of living in this country. Vice President Harris, you and President Trump were elected 4 years ago, and your opponent on the stage here tonight often asks his supporters, are you better off than you were 4 years ago? When it comes to the economy, do you believe Americans are better off than they were 4 years ago?
So I was raised as a middle-class kid.
There we go.
And I'm actually the only person on the stage who has a plan that is about lifting up the middle class and working people of America.
Wow.
I believe in the ambition, the aspirations, the dreams of the American
look like
people.
a stronger speaker?
And that is why I imagine and have actually a plan to build what I call an opportunity economy. Because here's the thing. We know that we have a shortage of homes and housing, and the cost of housing is too expensive for far too many people.
But why
we
is it
know
so
that young
expensive?
families need support to raise their children, and I intend on extending a tax cut for those families of $6,000, which is the largest child tax credit that we have given in a long time, so that those young families can afford to buy a crib, buy a car seat, buy clothes for their children. My passion, one of them, is small businesses. My mother raised my sister and me, but there was a woman who helped raise us. We call her our second mother.
The answer
She's a
is
small
no, the
business
economy's
owner.
not good.
I love our small businesses. My plan is to give a $50,000 tax deduction to start up small businesses, knowing they are part of the backbone of America's economy. My opponent, on the other hand, his plan is to do what he has done before.
Yep.
Which is to provide a tax cut for billionaires and big corporations, which will result in $5 trillion to America's deficit. My opponent has a plan that I call the Trump's sales tax, which would be a 20% tax on everyday goods that you rely on to get through the month. Economists have said that Trump sales tax would actually result for middle-class families in about $4,000 more a year because of his policies and his ideas about what should be the backs of middle-class people paying for tax cuts for billionaires.
President Trump, I'll give you 2 minutes.
First of all, I have no sales tax. That's an incorrect statement. She knows that. We're doing tariffs on other countries. Other countries are going to finally, after 75 years, pay us back for all that we've done for the world. And the tariff will be substantial in some cases. I took in billions and billions of dollars, as you know, from China. In fact, they never took the tariff off because there was so much money they can't. It would totally destroy everything that they've set out to do. They're taking in billions of dollars from China and other places. They've left the tariffs on. When I had it, I had tariffs, and yet I had no inflation. Look, we've had a terrible economy because inflation which is really known as a country buster. It breaks up countries. We have inflation like very few people have ever seen before, probably the worst in our nation's history. We were at 21%, but that's being generous because many things are 50, 60, 70, and 80% higher than they were just a few years ago. This has been a disaster for people, for the middle class, but for every class. On top of that, we have millions of people pouring into our country from prisons and jails, from mental institutions and insane asylums. And they're coming in and they're taking jobs that are occupied right now by African Americans and Hispanics, and also unions. Unions are going to be affected very soon. And you see what's happening. You see what's happening with towns throughout the United States. You look at Springfield, Ohio. You look at Aurora in Colorado. They are taking over the towns. They're taking over buildings. They're going in violently. These are the people that she and Biden led into our country, and they're destroying our country. They're dangerous. They're at the highest level of criminality, and we have to get them out. We have to get them out fast. I created one of the greatest economies in the history of our country. I'll do it again and even better.
We are going to get to immigration and border security during this debate, but I would like to let Vice President Harris respond on the economy here.
Well, I would love to. Let's talk about what Donald Trump left us. Donald Trump left us the worst unemployment since the Great Depression. Donald Trump left us the worst public health epidemic in a century. Donald Trump left us the worst attack on our democracy since the Civil War. And what we have done is clean up Donald Trump's mess. What we have done and what I intend to do is build on what we know are the aspirations and the hopes of the American people. But I'm going to tell you all in this debate tonight, you're going to hear from the same old tired playbook, a bunch of lies, grievances, and name-calling. What you're going to hear tonight is a detailed and dangerous plan called Project 2025.
Oh, my God.
Everybody drink. Intends on implementing if he were elected again. I believe very strongly that the American people want a president who understands the importance of bringing us together, knowing we have so much more in common than what separates us. And I pledge to you to be a president for all Americans.
President Trump, I'll give you a minute here to respond.
Number one, I have nothing to do, as you know, and as she knows better than anyone, I have nothing to do with Project 2025. That's out there. I haven't read it. I don't want to read it purposely. I'm not going to read it. This was a group of people that got together. They came up with some ideas, I guess some good, some bad. But it makes no difference. I have nothing to do. Everybody knows I'm an open book. Everybody knows what I'm going to do. Cut taxes very substantially and create a great economy like I did before. We had the greatest economy. We got hit with a pandemic. And the pandemic was not since 1917, where 100 million people died, has there been anything like it. We did a phenomenal job with the pandemic. We handed them over a country where the economy and where the stock market was higher than it was before the pandemic came in. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. We made ventilators for the entire world. We got gowns, we got masks, we did things that nobody thought possible. And people give me credit for rebuilding the military. They give me credit for a lot of things, but not enough credit for the great job we did with the pandemic. But the only jobs they got were bounce back jobs. These were jobs bounced back, and it bounced back and it went to their benefit. But I was the one that created them. They know it, and so does everybody else.
Vice President Harris, I'll let you respond.
So spicy tonight.
Donald Trump has no plan for you.
I thought he had
when you
a plan.
look at his economic
Yeah, I thought he had
plan,
plans
it's
for
all
2025.
about
I thought you
tax
hated his
breaks for
plan.
the richest people. I am offering what I describe as an opportunity economy. And the best economists in our country, if not the world, have reviewed our relative plans for the future of America.
Jim Cramer,
What
maybe?
Goldman Sachs has said is that Donald Trump's plan would make the economy worse. Mine would strengthen the economy. What the Wharton School has said is Donald Trump's plan would
He's like
actually
stone-faced,
explode
where
the
she has
deficit.
been sort of like
16 Nobel laureates have described his economic plan as something that would increase inflation and by the middle of next year would invite a recession. You just have to look at where we are and where we stand on the issues. And I'd invite you to know that Donald Trump actually has no plan for you because he is more interested in defending himself than he is in looking out for you.
It's just a soundbite. They gave her that to say. Look, I went to the Wharton School of Finance, and many of those professors, the top professors, think my plan is a brilliant plan. It's a great plan. It's a plan that's going to bring up our worth, our value as a country. It's going to make people want to be able to go and work and create jobs and create a lot of good, solid money for our country. And just to finish off, she doesn't have a plan. She copied Biden's plan. And it's like 4 sentences, like run, spot, run. 4 sentences that are just, we're trying to lower taxes. She doesn't have a plan. Take a look at her plan. She doesn't have a plan.
Mr. President, I do want to drill down on something you both brought up. The Vice President brought up
11 minutes
your
in.
tariffs. You responded, and let's drill down on this, because your plan is what she calls is essentially a national sales tax. Your proposal calls for tariffs, as you pointed out here, on foreign imports across the board. You recently said that you might double your plan, imposing tariffs up to 20% on goods coming into this country. As you know, many economists say that with tariffs at that level, costs are then passed on to the consumer. Vice President Harris has argued it'll mean higher prices on gas, food, clothing, medication, arguing it costs the typical family nearly $4,000 a year. Do you believe Americans can afford higher prices because of tariffs?
They're not going to have higher prices. What's going to have and who's going to have higher prices is China and all of the countries that have been ripping us off for years. I was the only president ever. China was paying us hundreds of billions of dollars, and so were other countries. And, you know, if she doesn't like them, they should have gone out and they should have immediately cut the tariffs. But those tariffs are there 3.5 years now under their administration. We are going to take in billions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars. I had no inflation, virtually no inflation. They had the highest inflation perhaps in the history of our country, because I've never seen a worse period of time. People can't go out and buy cereal or bacon or eggs or anything else. The people of our country are absolutely dying with what they've done. They've destroyed the economy. And all you have to do is look at a poll. The polls say 80 and 85 and even 90% that the Trump economy was great, that their economy was terrible.
Vice President Harris, I do want to ask for your response. And you heard what the president said there, because the Biden administration did keep a number of the Trump tariffs in place. So how do you respond?
Well, let's be clear that the Trump administration resulted in a trade deficit, one of the highest we've ever seen in the history of America. He invited trade wars. You want to talk about his deal with China? What he ended up doing is, under Donald Trump's presidency, he ended up selling American
Notice her
chips
sidestepping any
to
connection
China
to the Biden administration.
to help them improve and modernize their military, basically sold us out when a policy about China should be in making sure the United States of America wins the competition for the 21st century, which means focusing on the details of what that requires, focusing on relationships with our allies, focusing on investing in American-based technology so that we win the race on AI, on quantum computing, focusing on what we need to do to support America's workforce so that we don't end up having on the short end of the stick in terms of workers' rights. But what Donald Trump did, let's talk about this, with COVID, is he actually thanked President Xi for what he did during COVID. Look at his tweet. Thank you, President Xi, exclamation point. When we know that Xi was responsible for lacking and not giving us transparency about the origins of COVID.
Wait a minute. Wait a minute. She
They
just said
bought
it's a
their
China
chips
virus?
from Taiwan. We hardly make
That was
chips
a twist?
anymore because of philosophies like they have and policies like they have. I don't say her because she has no policy. Everything that she believed 3 years ago and 4 years ago is out the window. She's going to my philosophy now. In fact, I was going to send her a MAGA hat. She's got my philosophy. If she ever got elected, she'd change it.
Oh, she's laughing.
It will be the end of our country. She's a Marxist. Everybody knows she's a Marxist. Her father's a Marxist professor in economics, and he taught her well.
Now she's excited.
She's done
Tell
to
me
our
more.
country. And when you look at these millions and millions of people that are pouring into our country monthly,
Well, she's crossing
where
her
it's,
over
I
herself,
believe,
so she's
21
feeling
million
defensive.
people,
That's
not the 15 that people say, and I think it's a lot higher than the 21. That's bigger than New York State pouring in. And just look at what they're doing to our country. They're criminals. Many of these people coming in are criminals. And that's bad for our economy, too. You know, you mentioned before, we'll talk about immigration later. Well, bad immigration is the worst thing that can happen to our economy. They have, and she has, destroyed our country with policy that's insane. Almost policy that you'd say they have to hate our country.
President Trump, thank you. Lindsay?
I want to turn to the issue of abortion. President Trump, you've often touted that you were able to kill Roe v. Wade. Last year, you said that you were proud to be the most pro-life president in American history. Then last month, you said that your administration would be great for women and their reproductive rights. In your home state of Florida, you surprised many with regard to your 6-week abortion ban because you initially had said that it was too short. And you said, quote, I'm going to be voting that we need more than 6 weeks. But then the very next day, you reversed course and said you would vote to support the 6-week ban. Vice President Harris says that women shouldn't trust you on the issue of abortion because you've changed your position so many times. Therefore, why should they trust you?
Well, the reason I'm doing that vote is because the plan is, as you know, the vote is, they have abortion in the 9th month. They even have, and you can look at the governor of West Virginia, the previous governor of West Virginia, not the current governor, who's doing an excellent job. But the governor before, he said the baby will be born and we will decide what to do with the baby. In other words, we'll execute the baby. And that's why I did that, because that predominates, because they're radical. The Democrats are radical in that. And her vice presidential pick, which I think was a horrible pick, by the way, for our country,
in front of herself.
because he is really out of it. But her vice presidential pick says abortion in the 9th month is absolutely fine. He also says execution after birth. It's execution, no longer abortion, because the baby is born, is okay. And that's not okay with me, hence the vote. But what I did is something for 52 years. They've been trying to get Roe v. Wade into the states. And through the genius and heart and strength of 6 Supreme Court justices, we were able to do that. Now, I believe in the exceptions for rape, incest, and life of the mother. I believe strongly in it. Ronald Reagan did also. 85% of Republicans do. Exceptions. Very important. But we were able to get it, and now states are voting on it. And for the first time, you're going to see, look, this is an issue that's torn our country apart for 52 years. Every legal scholar, every Democrat, every Republican, liberal, conservative, they all wanted this issue to be brought back to the states where the people could vote. And that's what happened. Now, Ohio, the vote was somewhat liberal. Kansas, the vote was somewhat liberal, much more liberal than people would have thought. But each individual state is voting. It's the vote of the people now. It's not tied up in the federal government. I did a great service in doing it. It took courage to do it. And the Supreme Court had great courage in doing it. And I give tremendous credit to those 6 justices.
There is no state in this country where it is legal to kill a baby after it's born. Madam Vice President, I want to get your response to your motion.
Well, as I said, you're going to hear a bunch of lies, and that's not actually a surprising fact. Let's understand how we got here. Donald Trump hand-selected 3 members of the United States Supreme Court with the intention that they would undo the protections of Roe v. Wade. And they did exactly as he intended. And now in over 20 states, there are Trump abortion bans, which make it criminal for a doctor or nurse to provide health care. In one state, it provides prison for life. Trump abortion bans that make no exception even for rape and incest, which understand what that means. A survivor of a crime, a violation to their
So what
body
about the 12
does
and
not have
14-year-old
the right
girls
to make
that
a
have been
decision
raped by
about what
illegals?
happens
When are we gonna
to their
talk about
body
that?
next?
And
That
those
is
girls'
immoral.
lives are changed forever.
And
those
one
families'
does not
lives are
have to
changed forever
abandon
because
their
of their
faith
failed
or
policies.
deeply held
I don't think
beliefs
she could
to agree.
win any
The
moderate
government
slash,
and
like,
Donald Trump
conservative
certainly
leaning
should
independent
not
on
be
this
telling
issue.
a
Right,
woman
and
what
they've all
She's too
made
to
up
do.
their
extreme. You
minds.
can't
Her
tour a
body.
Planned
I have
Parenthood
talked with women
and then come out and say,
around
I'm the more
our country.
reasonable one.
You want to talk about this is what people wanted? Pregnant women who want to carry a pregnancy to term, suffering from a miscarriage, being denied care in an emergency
that's
room
not the
because
same
the
thing,
healthcare
though.
providers are afraid they might go to jail, and she's bleeding out in a car in the parking lot.
States voted for it.
She didn't want that. Her husband didn't want that. A 12 or 13-year-old survivor of incest being forced to carry a pregnancy to term.
He just
They
said
don't
that he
want
is
that.
okay with
He
an
just gave an
exception for
exception to
incest.
it.
And
Yeah.
I pledge to you, when Congress passes a bill to put back in place the protections of Roe v. Wade, as President of the United States, I will proudly sign it into law. But understand, if Donald Trump were to be
And they never include
reelected, he
Pennsylvania.
will sign a
They
national
would say,
abortion ban.
"We're not
Understand,
part of
in
the
his
ban because we have
Project
24 months."
2025,
At
there
24
would be
months,
a
it's
national
still a ban after
abortion,
24
a
months.
monitor
Or weeks,
that
I'm
would be
sorry, weeks,
monitoring
my
your
bad.
pregnancies, your miscarriages.
Yeah,
I
2
think the
years.
American
My
people
bad.
believe that certain freedoms, in particular the freedom to make decisions about one's own body,
I think this is the
should not
only
be
thing
made by
she's
the government.
rehearsed enough to
Thank
talk
you,
about it
Vice
later.
President Harris.
Well, there she goes again. It's a lie. I'm not signing a ban, and there's no reason to sign a ban because we've gotten what everybody wanted. Democrats, Republicans, and everybody else, and every legal scholar wanted it to be brought back into the states, and the states are voting. And it may take a little time, but for 52 years, this issue has torn our country apart, and they've wanted it back in the states. And I did something that nobody thought was possible. The states are now voting. What she says is an absolute lie. And as far as the abortion ban, no, I'm not in favor of abortion ban, but it doesn't matter because this issue has now been taken over by the states.
Would you veto a national abortion ban if it came
Well,
to
I
your
won't
desk?
have to because, again, 2 things. Number one, she said she'll go back to Congress. She'll never get the vote. It's impossible for her to get the vote, especially now with the 50-50 and essentially 50-50 in both Senate and the House. She's not going to get the vote. She can't get the vote. She won't even come close to it. So it's just talk. You know what it reminds me of when they said they're going to get student loans terminated,
Oh, that's
and
such a
it
good
ended up being a
pivot.
total catastrophe. The student loans, and then her, I think probably her boss, if you call him a boss, he spends all his time on the beach. But look, her boss went out and said, we'll do it again. We'll do it a different way. And he went out, got rejected again by the Supreme Court. So all these students got taunted with this whole thing about this whole idea. And how unfair that would have been, part of the reason they lost, to the millions and millions of people that had to pay off their student loans. They didn't get it for free. But they were saying it's the same way that they talked about that they talk about abortion.
But if I could just get a yes or no, because your running mate, J.D. Vance, has said that you would veto it if it did come to your desk.
Well, I didn't discuss it with J.D. In all fairness, J.D. And I don't mind if he has a certain view, but I think he was speaking for me, but I really didn't. Look, we don't have to discuss it because she'd never be able to get it, just like she couldn't get student loans. They couldn't get student loans. They didn't even come close to getting student loans. They taunted young people and a lot of other people that had loans.
One of the biggest false promises of the Biden campaign.
So it doesn't matter what she says about going to Congress. Well, wonderful. Let's go to Congress. Do it. But the fact is that for years they wanted to get it out of Congress and out of the federal government. And we did something that everybody said couldn't be done. And now you have a vote of the people on abortion.
Vice President Harris, want to give you your time to respond. But I do want to ask, would you support any restrictions on a woman's right to an abortion?
I absolutely support reinstating the protections of Roe v. Wade. And as you rightly mentioned, nowhere in America is a woman carrying a pregnancy to term and asking for an abortion. That is not happening. It's insulting to the women of America. And understand what has been happening under Donald Trump's abortion bans.
I can't do 4 years of her speaking for the women of America. I'm personally not okay
having
with
a
that.
family. Are being denied IVF happening in our country. Working people, working women who are working 1 or 2 jobs, who can barely afford childcare as it is, have to travel to another state to get on a plane sitting next to strangers to go and get the health care she needs. Barely can afford to do it, and what you are putting her through
be responsible for
is
your actions.
unconscionable. And the people of America have not, the majority of Americans believe in a woman's right to make decisions about her own body. And that is why in every state where this issue has been on the ballot, in red and blue states both, the people of America have voted for freedom.
Vice President Harris.
Excuse me, I have to respond.
Sidestepped being
another
specific
lie.
there.
It's another lie. I have been a leader on IVF, which is fertilization. The IVF, I have been a leader. In fact, when they got a very negative decision on IVF from the Alabama courts, I saw the people of Alabama and the legislature 2 days later voted it in. I've been a leader on it. They know that, and everybody else knows it. I have been a leader on fertilization, IVF. And the other thing, you should ask.
Hear that whisper?
I did.
Will she allow
muted.
abortion in the 8th month, 9th month, 7th month?
Come on.
Okay,
Why can't she say it?
Why don't you ask her that question?
Why don't you answer the question? Would you
because
veto?
under Roe v. Wade,
Answer the question. Would you veto?
you could do abortions in the 7th month, the 8th month, the 9th month,
not true.
and probably after birth. Just look at the governor, former governor of Virginia. The governor of Virginia said we put the baby aside and then we determine what we want to do with the baby.
President Trump, thank you.
We're going to turn now to immigration and border security. We know it's an issue that's important to Republicans, Democrats, voters across the board in this country. Vice President Harris, you were tasked by President Biden with getting to the root causes of migration from Central America. We know that illegal border crossings reached a record high in the Biden administration.
She's like, I don't
this
even
past
know Joe
June,
Biden. I've
President
never heard
Biden
of him.
imposed tough new asylum restrictions. We know the numbers since then have dropped significantly. But my question to you tonight is, why did the administration wait until 6 months before the election to act? And would you have done anything differently from President Biden on this?
So I'm the only person on this stage who has prosecuted transnational criminal organizations for the trafficking of guns, drugs, and human beings.
But answer
and
the
let
damn
me
question.
say that the United States Congress, including some of the most conservative members of the United States Senate, came up with a border security bill which I supported. And that bill would have put 1,500 more border agents on the border to help those folks who are working there right now overtime trying to do their job. It would have allowed us to stem the flow of fentanyl coming into the United States. I know there are so many families watching tonight who have been personally affected by the surge of fentanyl in our country.
And to be clear,
that bill
under the Biden
would have put
administration.
more resources to allow us to
Biden
prosecute
administration's
transnational
request
criminal
for more
organizations for
manpower
trafficking in
was
guns,
for-
drugs,
to
and human
increase
beings. But you know what
processing
happened to that
capabilities,
bill?
not to turn
Donald
people
Trump
away.
got on the
Correct.
phone,
That's a fact.
called up some folks in Congress and said, kill the bill. And you know why?
This is a terrible
because
bill.
he'd prefer to run
The
on
bill
a
that
problem
said we should have a
instead of
certain number of
fixing
illegal
a
immigrants enter the
problem.
country.
And understand, this comes at a time where the people of our country actually need a leader who engages in solutions,
That
who
seems like an
actually
insult to Joe
addresses
Biden.
the problems at hand.
Well, to give you
But what we
context,
have in the former president
if
is
it's 10
someone who
million
would prefer to
individuals
run
that
on
have
a
come into
problem
this country
instead of
illegally
fixing a
under Joe
problem.
Biden. The state
And I'll
of
tell you
Tennessee
something, he's going to talk
is
about immigration a
7.3
lot
million.
tonight, even when it's not the subject
Larger
that
than
is
the
being
entire state of
raised.
Tennessee.
And I'm going to actually do something really unusual, and I'm going to invite you to attend one of Donald Trump's rallies, because it's a really interesting thing to watch.
Have you ever been to one?
You will see during the course of his rallies, he talks about fictional characters like Hannibal Lecter. He will talk about windmills cause cancer. And what you will also notice is that people start leaving his
pivoting
rallies
away from
early
immigration and
out of
crime.
exhaustion and boredom. And I will tell you, the one thing you will not hear him talk about is you. You will not hear him talk about your needs, your dreams, and your desires.
What is this?
And I'll tell you, I believe
She's
you
never been to
deserve
one of his
a
rallies. How
president
can she
who
act like
actually
she's a
puts you
source?
first. And I pledge to you that I will.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump, on that point, I want to get your response. Let me just ask, though, why did you try to kill that bill successfully so that would have put thousands of additional agents and officers on the border?
First, let me respond as to the rallies. She said people start leaving. People don't go to her rallies. There's no reason to go. And the people that do go, she's bussing them in and paying them to be there. And then showing them in a different light.
Okay,
so
we'll go to
she can't talk
immigration
about that. People don't leave my rallies. We have the biggest rallies, the most incredible rallies in the history of politics. That's because people want to take their country back. Our country is being lost. We're a failing nation. And it happened 3.5 years ago. And what's going on here, you're going to end up in World War III, just to go into another subject. What they have done to our country by allowing these millions and millions of people to come into our country, and look at what's happening to the towns all over the United States. And a lot of towns don't want to talk. It's not going to be Aurora or Springfield. A lot of towns don't want to talk about it because they're so embarrassed by it. In Springfield, they're eating the dogs. The people. They're eating the cats. They're eating.
I didn't hear anything about any dogs.
Of the people
Mainstream media is going to freak out about that tomorrow.
This is what's happening in our country, and it's a shame. As far as rallies are concerned, as far as the reason they go is they like what I say. They want to bring
rally
our
thing's
country
distracting,
back.
though. He should
They
be
want to
more
make
focused on
America
immigration.
great again. It's a very simple phrase: make America great again. She's destroying this country, and if she becomes president, this country doesn't have a chance of success. Not only success, we'll end up being Venezuela on steroids.
I just want to clarify here. You bring up Springfield, Ohio, and ABC News did reach out to the city manager there. He told us there have been no credible reports of specific claims of pets being harmed, injured, or abused by individuals.
There's a fact, right?
Let me just say here, this is
the people on television say my dog was taken and used for food. So maybe he said that, and maybe that's a good thing to say for a city manager.
I'm not taking this from television.
But the people on television saying their dog was eaten by the people that went there.
Again, the Springfield city manager says there's no evidence of that. Vice President Harris,
out.
I'll let you respond to the rest of what you've heard.
You talk about extreme.
No, the laugh.
You know,
The laugh.
This is, I think, one of the reasons why in this election, I actually have the endorsement of 200 Republicans who have formerly worked with President Bush, Mitt Romney, and John McCain.
I think
that's the win she thinks it is.
Former Vice President Dick Cheney and Congress member Liz Cheney. And if you want to really know
Wrap it up, election's over.
the inside track on who the former president is, if he didn't make it clear already, just ask people who have worked with him. His former chief of staff, a 4-star general, has said he has contempt for the Constitution of the United States. His former national security advisor has said he is dangerous and unfit.
Less on character, more on immigration.
His former Secretary of Defense has said the nation, the Republic, would never survive another Trump term.
That's all
She's doing
And
this
when
to get
we
under his
listen
skin.
to this kind of rhetoric, when the issues that affect the American people are not being addressed, I think the choice is clear in this election.
President Trump, I'll give you a quick minute to respond here.
Thank you, because when I hear that, see, I'm a different kind of a person. I fired most of those people. Not so graciously. They did bad things or a bad job. I fired them. They never fired one person. They didn't fire anybody having to do with Afghanistan and the Taliban and the 13 people who's were just killed, viciously and violently killed. And I got to know the parents and the family. They didn't fire. They should have fired all those generals, all those top people, because that was one of the most incompetently handled situations anybody has ever seen. So when somebody does a bad job, I fire him. And you take a guy like Esper. He was no good. I fired him. So he writes a book. Another one writes a book. Because with me, they can write books. With nobody else, can they? But they have done such a poor job, and they never fire anybody. Look at the economy. Look at the inflation. They didn't fire any
about
of
the
their
guy that was
economists. They
stealing
have the
the
same
luggage in the
people.
airport,
That's a
right?
good way not to have
Didn't-
books written about you. But just to finish, I got
fired
more
though, I'm
votes
sure, right?
than any Republican
Wyatt
in history
left.
by far. In fact, I got more votes than any president, sitting president in history by far.
But more on immigration.
Let me continue on immigration. It was what you wanted to talk about earlier, so let's get back to your deportation proposal that the vice president has reacted to as well. President Trump, you call this the largest domestic deportation operation in the history of our country. You say you would use the National Guard. You say if things get out of control, you'd have no problem using the U.S.
With local
military.
police, yes.
You also said you would use local police. How would you deport 11 million undocumented immigrants? I know you believe that number is much higher. Take us through this. What does this look like? Will authorities be going door to door in this country?
Confuse
Oh
the
my
issue.
God.
Talk
It is
about
much
the
higher
difficulty of the
because of them.
logistics rather
They
than
allowed
we have
criminals,
a country to protect.
many
we just
millions
decide
of
who
criminals.
comes in. We
They
decide
allowed
who has to leave.
terrorists. They allowed common street criminals. They allowed people to come in, drug dealers, to come into our country, and they're now in the United States and told by their countries like Venezuela, don't ever come back or we're going to kill you. Do you know that crime in Venezuela and crime in countries all over the world is way down? You know why? Because they've taken their criminals off the street and they've given them to her to put into our country. Right. And this will be one of the greatest mistakes in history for them to allow. And I think they probably did it because they think they're going to get votes, but it's not worth it because they're destroying the fabric of our country by what they've done. There's never been anything done like this at all. They've destroyed the fabric of our country. Millions of people let in, and all over the world, crime is down all over the world except here. Crime here is up and through the roof. Despite their fraudulent statements that they made, crime in this country is through the roof. And we have a new form of crime. It's called migrant crime. And it's happening at levels that nobody thought possible.
President Trump, as you know, the FBI says overall violent crime is actually coming down in this country.
Excuse me, the FBI they were defrauding statements. They didn't include the worst cities. They didn't include the cities with the worst crime. It was a fraud. Just like their number of 818,000 jobs that they said they created turned out to be a fraud.
President Trump, thank you. I'll let you respond.
Chicago and LA.
Well, I think this is so rich. Coming from someone who has been prosecuted.
That's her.
She was not going to go low.
Economic
Remember
crimes, election interference has been found.
She's not talking about
liable
immigration, though.
For
She's
sexual
only
assault.
talking about his character.
And his next big court
she can't
appearance
talk
is
about
in
immigration.
November at
No,
his
she
own
can't.
criminal sentencing. And let's be clear.
I wish you would just say it, though,
where
like
each
you were
person
sidestepping the
stands
issue. It's
on
not
the
about me,
issue
it's about the
of what is
country.
important about respect for the rule of law and respect for law enforcement. The former vice president
she better
called
not go
for
there.
defunding
She better not
federal
go
law
there.
enforcement, 45,000 agents, get this, on the day after he was arraigned on 34 felony counts. So let's talk about what is important in this race. It is important that we move forward, that we turn the page on this same old tired rhetoric and
Turn the page.
address
Stop
the needs of
talking
the
about
American
it.
people, address what we need to do about the housing shortage, which I have a plan for, address what we must do to support our small businesses, address bringing down the price of groceries. But frankly,
That's
the
3.5
American people
years.
are exhausted with this same old tired playbook.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
Excuse me. Every one of those cases was started by them against their political opponent. And I'm winning most of them, and I will win the rest on appeal. And you saw that with the decision that came down just recently from the Supreme Court. I'm winning most of them. But those are cases, it's called weaponization. Never happened in this country. They weaponized the Justice Department. Every one of those cases was involved with the DOJ, from Atlanta and Fani Willis to the Attorney General of New York and the DA in New York, every one of those cases. And then they say, oh, he's a criminal. They're the ones that made them go after me. By the way, Joe Biden was found essentially guilty on the documents case. And what happened in my documents case? They said, oh, that's the toughest of them all. A complete and total victory. 2 months ago, it was thrown out. It's weaponization, and they used it, and it's never happened in this country. They used it to try and win an election. They're
Trump,
fake cases.
President Trump, thank you. A really quick response here, Vice President Harris, on this notion of weaponization of the Justice Department.
Well, let's talk about extreme and understand the context in which this election in 2024 is taking place. The United States Supreme Court recently ruled that the former president would essentially be immune from any misconduct if he were to enter the White House again. Understand, this is someone who has openly said he would terminate, I'm quoting, terminate the Constitution of the United States, that he would weaponize the Department of Justice against his political enemies. Someone who has openly expressed disdain for members of our military. Understand what it would mean if Donald Trump were back in the White House with no guardrails. Because certainly we know now the court won't stop him. We know J.D. Vance is not going to stop him. It's up to the American people
Vice President
to stop
Harris,
him.
Thank you. Lindsay?
Vice President Harris, in your last run for president.
This is the one that weaponized, not me. She weaponized. I probably took a bullet to the head because of the things that they say about me. They talk about democracy. I'm a threat to democracy. They're the threat to democracy with a fake Russia investigation
We do have a lot
that went nowhere.
We have a lot to get to. Lindsay?
Vice President Harris, in your last run for president, you said you wanted to ban fracking. Now you don't. You wanted mandatory government buyback programs for assault weapons. Now your campaign says you don't. You supported decriminalizing border crossings. Now you're taking a harder line. I know you say that your values have not changed. So then why have so many of your policy positions changed?
So my values have not changed. At least every point that you've made. But in particular, let's talk about fracking because we're here in Pennsylvania. I made that very clear in 2020. I will not ban fracking. I have not banned fracking as Vice President of the United States. And in fact, I was the tie-breaking vote on the Inflation Reduction Act, which opened new leases for fracking. My position is that we have got to invest in diverse sources of energy so we reduce our reliance on foreign oil. We have had the largest increase in domestic oil production in history because of an approach that recognizes that we cannot over-rely on foreign oil. As it relates to my values, let me tell you, I grew up a middle-class kid raised by a hard-working mother who worked and saved and was able to buy our first home when I was a teenager.
I'm not sure. No, she wasn't. She
The
lived in a
values
very
I
nice
bring
neighborhood.
to the importance of home ownership, knowing not everybody got handed $400 million on a silver platter and then filed bankruptcy 6 times, is a value that I bring to my work to say we are going to work with the private sector and home builders to increase 3 million homes, increased by 3 million homes.
She's not answering any of the other things that came up.
My work that is related to having a friend when I was in high school who was sexually assaulted by her stepfather.
But she's not answering who she is as a lawmaker right now.
On protecting women and children from violent crime is based on a value that is deeply grounded in the importance of standing up for those who are most vulnerable. My work that is about protecting Social Security and Medicare is based on long-standing work that I have done, protecting seniors from scams. My values have not changed. And what is important is that there is a president who actually brings values and a perspective that is about lifting people up and not beating people down and name-calling. The true measure of the leader
I don't understand
is the leader who actually understands the strength is not in beating people down, it's in lifting people up. I intend to be that president.
President Trump, your response?
First of all, I wasn't given $400 million. I wish I was. My father was a Brooklyn builder, Brooklyn, Queens, and a great father, and I learned a lot from him. But I was given a fraction of that, a tiny fraction, and I built it into many, many billions of dollars, many, many billions. And when people see it, they are even surprised. So we don't have to talk about that. Fracking, she's been against it for 12 years. Defund the police, she's been against that forever. She gave all that stuff up very wrongly, very horribly, and everybody's laughing at it, okay? They're all laughing at it. She gave up at least 12 and probably 14 or 15 different policies. Like, she was big on defund the police. In Minnesota, she went out, wait a minute, I'm talking now. She went out. She went out.
He's had so many good
in
ones.
Minnesota
That was so good. That
and
was so
wanted to
good.
let criminals that killed people, that burned down Minneapolis.
She did what he
she
wanted.
went out and raised money to get him out of jail. She
She's
did
so
things
mad
that
he
nobody
took
would
her
ever
line.
think of. Now she wants to do
The crab
transgender
removal.
operations on illegal aliens that are in prison. This is a radical left liberal that would do this. She wants to confiscate your guns, and she will never allow fracking in Pennsylvania. If she won the election, fracking in Pennsylvania will end on day one. Just to finish one thing, so important in my opinion. So I got the oil business going like nobody has ever done before. When they took over, they got rid of it, started getting rid of it, and the prices were going up the roof. They immediately let these guys go to where they were. I would have been 5 times, 4 times, 5 times higher, because you're talking about 3.5 years ago. They got it up to where I was because they had no choice, because the prices of energy were quadrupling and doubling. You saw what happened to
Takes time to
gasoline.
ramp up
So they
production.
said, let's go back to Trump.
logistics.
But if she won the election, the day after that election, they'll go back to destroying our country, and oil will be dead, fossil fuel will be dead. We'll go back to windmills, and we'll go back to solar, where they need a whole desert to get some energy to come out of. You ever see a solar plant? By the way, I'm a big fan of solar, but they take 400, 500 acres of desert
President
soil.
Trump, we have a
These
lot
are
of
not good
issues
things
that we
for the
have to get
environment,
to.
as
We're
she
out of time.
understands.
Thank you.
Lindsay, thank you. We have an election in just 56 days. And I want to talk about the peaceful transfer of power, which, of course, we all know is a cornerstone of our democracy and the role of a president in a moment of crisis. Mr. President, on January 6th, you told your supporters to march to the Capitol. You said you would be right there with them. The country and the world saw what played out at the Capitol that day, the officers coming under attack. Aides in the West Wing say you watched it unfold on television off the Oval Office.
You
did send out tweets, but it was more than 2 hours before you sent out that video message telling your supporters to go home. Is there anything you regret about what you did on that day?
Yeah, not
You
sending
just
a National
said
Guard.
a thing that isn't covered. Peacefully and patriotically, I said during my speech, not later on. Peacefully and patriotically. And nobody on the other side was killed. Ashley Babbitt was shot by an out-of-control police officer that should have never, ever shot her. It's a disgrace. But we didn't do this group of people that have been treated so badly. I ask, what about all the people that are pouring into our country and killing people that she allowed to pour in? She was the border czar. Remember that. She was the border czar. She doesn't want to be called the border czar because she's embarrassed by the border. In fact, she said at the beginning, oh, I'm surprised you're not talking about the border yet. That's because she knows what a bad job they've done. What about those people? When are they going to be prosecuted? When are these people from countries all over the world, not just South America? They're coming in from all over the world, David, all over the world. And crime rates are down all over the world because of it.
But let me just
when
ask
are those, David, when are those people going to be prosecuted? When are the people that burned down Minneapolis going to be prosecuted? Or in Seattle? They went into Seattle. They took over a big percentage of the city of Seattle. When are those people going to be prosecuted?
But let me just ask
you. Might ask her that question.
You were the president. You were watching it unfold on television. It's a very simple question as we move forward toward another election. Is there anything you regret about what you did on that day? Yes or no?
I had nothing to do with that other than they asked me to make a speech. I showed up for a speech. I said, I think it's going to be big. I went to Nancy Pelosi and the mayor of Washington, D.C., and the mayor put it back in writing, as you know. I said, this is going to be a very big rally or whatever you want to call it. And again, it wasn't done by me. It was done by others. I said, I'd like to give you 10,000 National Guard or soldiers. They rejected me. Nancy Pelosi rejected me. It was just 2 weeks ago. Her daughter has a tape of her saying she is fully responsible for what happened. They want to get rid of that tape. It would have never happened if Nancy Pelosi and the mayor of Washington did their jobs. I wasn't responsible for security. Nancy Pelosi was responsible. She didn't do her job.
The question was about you as president, not about former Speaker Pelosi. But I do want Vice President Harris to
need his
respond
editorial
here.
take at the end.
That's right.
Yeah.
I was at the Capitol on January 6th. I was
She was
the
at the
vice
DNC,
president-elect.
actually.
I was also an acting senator. I was there. And on that day, the President of the United States incited a violent mob to attack our nation's capital, to desecrate our nation's capital. On that day, 140 law enforcement officers were injured.
Emotional.
and some died. And understand,
Some died at some point.
former president has been indicted and impeached
Of old age.
for exactly that reason. But this is not an isolated situation. Let's remember Charlottesville,
Oh, Jesus.
where there
She's
was
copying
a mob
Biden in
of
the
people
most
carrying
stupid
tiki
way.
torches, spewing anti-Semitic hate. And what did the president then at the time say?
Oh my gosh, Kamala.
There were fine people on each side.
Oh,
Let's remember that when it came to the Proud Boys, a militia,
Does she not know this
know
is
they
a
were
fact
president
check?
said
Is she
stand
that
back
stupid?
and stand by. So for everyone watching who remembers what January 6th was, I say we don't have to go back.
Oh.
Let's not go back. We're not going back. It's
forward.
time to turn the page. And if that was a bridge
And
too
be
far for
unburdened by
you,
what
well,
it
there
is.
is a place
Somebody get her
in
a coconut
our
tree.
campaign for you to stand for country, to stand for our democracy, to stand for rule of law, and to end the chaos, and to end the approach that is about attacking the foundations of our democracy because you don't like the outcome. And be clear on that point. Donald Trump, the candidate, has said in this election there will be a bloodbath.
No, we
Oh,
If
don't.
this and the outcome of this election is not to his
Wow.
liking.
She should fire whoever
Let's turn
prepped
the
her.
page on
She's
this.
not
Let's
good.
not go back. Let's chart a
He'll address
course
that.
They've all
for
been
the future
previously debunked.
and not go backwards to the past.
Let me just follow up here.
It was a different term, and it was a term that related to energy because they have destroyed our energy business. That was where bloodbath was. Also, on Charlottesville, that story has been, as you would say, debunked.
Fact checker.
Laura
There
Ingraham,
you go. They keep fact
Sean
checking Trump.
Hannity,
Yeah.
Jesse, all of these
Snopes.
people, they covered it. If they go an extra sentence, they will see it was perfect. It was debunked in almost every newspaper, but they still bring it up, just like they bring 2025 up. They bring all of this stuff up. I ask you this. You talk about the Capitol. Why are we allowing these millions of people to come through on the southern border? How come she's not doing
If
it?
the Capitol had
And I'll
been
tell you what I would
secured,
do, and
it
I would
would
be
have
very
never
proud to do it.
Yeah.
Yes,
I would say we
Pelosi
both lead
failed.
this debate
She did.
right now.
And she admitted
I'd
it.
like to
Here we
see
go.
her go down to Washington, D.C. during this debate because we're wasting a lot of time. Go down to, because she's been so bad, it's so ridiculous. Go down to Washington, D.C. and let her sign a bill to close up the border because they have the right to do it. They don't need bills.
Yep.
They have the right to do it. The President of the United States, you'll get him out of bed, you'll wake him up at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, you say, come on down to the office, let's sign a bill. If he signs a bill that the border is closed, all he has to do is say it to the Border Patrol, who are phenomenal. If they do that, the border is closed.
Mr.
Those
President,
people are killing many people, unlike J6.
We talked immigration here tonight. I do want
Good
to
line.
focus on this next issue to both of you because it really brings us this into focus, truth in these times that we're living in. Mr. President, for 3.5 years after you lost the 2020 election, you repeatedly falsely claimed that you won, many times saying you won in a landslide. In the past couple of weeks leading up to this debate, you have said, quote, you lost by a whisker, that you, quote, didn't quite make it, that you came up a little bit short.
I said that?
Are you now acknowledging that you lost in 2020?
No, I don't acknowledge that at all.
But
I
you
said
did
that
say that.
sarcastically. You
But
know
those-
that. It was said, oh, we lost by a whisker. That was said sarcastically. Look, there's so much proof. All you have to do is look at it. And they should have sent it back
We're
to the
almost an hour in,
legislatures
there
for
are no
approval.
commercial breaks.
I got
Do you think
almost
they're gonna go the
75
full
million
solid
votes, the
90
most
minutes?
No,
votes
it's supposed
any
to be two
sitting
breaks.
Or are they
president
gonna
has
end
ever
early
gotten.
like the
I was
town
told if I
hall?
got 63, which was what I got in 2016, you can't be beaten. The election, people should never be thinking about an election as fraudulent. We need two things. We need walls, and we have to have it. We have to have borders, and we have to have good elections. Our elections are bad. And a lot of these illegal immigrants coming in, they're trying to get them to vote. They can't even speak English. They don't even know what country they're in practically. And these people are trying to get them to vote. And that's why they're allowing them to come into our country.
I did watch all of these pieces of video. I didn't detect the sarcasm, lost by a whisker. We didn't quite make it. And we should just point out here
I'm
as
tired of the
clarification, and you know this,
editorializing, ABC.
you and your allies, 60 cases in front of many judges, many of them
No
Republican.
judge looked at it.
And said
They
there's
said
no
we didn't have
widespread fraud.
standing. That's the other thing. They said we didn't have standing, a technicality. Can you imagine a system where a person in an election doesn't have standing? The president of the United States doesn't have standing. That's how we lost.
It's a weak
If
issue
you
for
look
him.
at the facts, and I'd love to have you'll do a special on it. I'll show you Georgia, and I'll show you Wisconsin, and I'll show you Pennsylvania, and I'll show you. We have so many facts and statistics, but you know what? That doesn't matter, because we have to solve the problem that we have right now. That's old news. And the problem that we have right now is we have a nation in decline, and they have put it into decline. We have a nation that is dying, David.
Mr. President, thank you. Vice President Harris, you heard the president there tonight. He said he didn't say that he lost by a whisker. So he still believes he did not lose the election that was won by President Biden and yourself. But I do want to ask you about something that's come up in the last couple of days. This was a post from President Trump about this upcoming election just weeks away. He said, when I win, those people who cheated, and then he lists donors, voters, election officials, he says will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, which will include long-term prison sentences. One of your campaign's top lawyers responded saying, we won't let Donald Trump intimidate us. We won't let him suppress the vote.
Right.
Is that what you believe he's trying to do? No matter what.
That's right.
Donald Trump was fired by 81 million people. So let's be clear about that. And clearly he is having a very difficult time processing that. But we cannot afford to have a president of the United States who attempts, as he did in the past, to upend the will of the voters in a free and fair election. And I'm going to tell you that I have traveled the world as Vice President of the United States, and world leaders are laughing at Donald Trump. I have talked with military leaders,
she know who her boss is?
With you, and they say you're a disgrace.
Yeah,
and when you then talk in this way in a presidential debate and deny what over and over again are court cases you have lost because you did, in fact, lose that election, it leads one to believe that perhaps we do not have in the candidate to my right the temperament or the ability to not be confused about fact. That's deeply troubling, and the American people deserve better.
And she knows how to see.
I'll give you 1 minute to respond.
Let me just tell you about world leaders. Viktor Orban, one of the most respected men, they call him a strong man. He's a tough person, smart, Prime Minister of Hungary. They said, why is the whole world blowing up? 3 years ago, it wasn't. Why is it blowing up? He said, because you need Trump back as president. They were afraid of him. China was afraid, and I don't like to use the word afraid, but I'm just quoting him. China was afraid of him. North Korea was afraid of him. Look at what's going on with North Korea, by the way. He said Russia was afraid of him. I ended the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, and Biden put it back on day one, but he ended the XL pipeline. The XL pipeline in our country, he ended that. But he let the Russians build a pipeline going all over Europe and heading into Germany, the biggest pipeline in the world.
He cares about the economy and the environment.
Viktor Orban said it. He said the most respected, most feared person is Donald Trump. We had no problems when Trump was president, but when this weak, pathetic man that you saw at a debate just a few months ago, that if he weren't in that debate, he'd be running instead of her. She got no votes. He got 14 million votes. What you did, you talk about a threat to democracy. He got 14 million votes, and they threw him out of office. And you know what? I'll give you a little secret. He hates her. He can't stand her. He got 14 million votes. They threw him out. She got 0 votes. And when she ran, she was the first one to leave because she failed. And now she's running. I don't understand it, but I'm okay with it because
your time is
I think we're going to do very well.
We've got a lot more.
Turning now to the Israel-Hamas war, and the hostages were still being held, Americans among them. Vice President Harris in December, you said, quote, Israel has a right to defend itself, but you added, quote, it matters how, saying international humanitarian law must be respected. Israel must do more to protect innocent civilians. You said that 9 months ago. Now an estimated 40,000 Palestinians are dead. Nearly 100 hostages remain. Just last week, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said there's not a deal in the making. President Biden has not been able to break through the stalemate. How would you do it?
Well, let's understand how we got here. On October 7th,
I grew up in a middle-class family.
Hamas, a terrorist organization,
my mom was a single mom,
and a nice,
slaughtered 1,200
four-bedroom
Israelis.
Victorian house.
Many of them young people who were simply attending a concert. Women were horribly raped. And so absolutely, I said then, I say now, Israel has a right to defend itself. We would. And how it does so matters. because it is also true, far too many innocent Palestinians have been killed. Children, mothers. What we know is
very
that
rehearsed to me.
this war must end. It must end immediately, and the way it will end is we need a ceasefire deal and we need the hostages out. And so we will continue to work around the clock on that. Work around the clock, also understanding that we must chart a course for a two-state solution. And in that solution, there must be security for the Israeli people and Israel, and in equal measure for the Palestinians. But the one thing I will assure you always, I will always give Israel the ability to defend itself, in particular as it relates to Iran and any threat that Iran and its proxies pose to Israel. But we must have a two-state solution where we can rebuild Gaza, where the Palestinians have security, self-determination, and the dignity they so rightly deserve.
Let us not forget.
President Trump, how would you negotiate with
Hamas terrorists just
Netanyahu and
killed
also Hamas
hostages.
in order to get the hostages out and
There are
prevent the
moments for
killing
being
of more
rescued.
innocent civilians in Gaza?
If I were president, it would have never started.
That's right.
If I were president, Russia would have never, ever, I know Putin very well, he would have never, and there was no threat of it either, by the way, for 4 years, have gone into Ukraine and killed millions of people when you add it up, far worse than people understand what's going on over there. But when she mentions about Israel, all of a sudden, she hates Israel. She wouldn't even meet with Netanyahu when he went to Congress to make a very important speech. She refused to be there because she was at a sorority party of hers. She wanted to go to the sorority party. She hates Israel. If she's president, I believe that Israel will not exist within 2 years from now. And I've been pretty good at predictions, and I hope I'm wrong about that one. She hates Israel. At the same time, in her own way, she hates the Arab population because the whole place is going to get blown up. Arabs, Jewish people, Israel will be gone. It would have never happened. Iran was broke under Donald Trump. Yep. Now Iran has $300 billion because they took off all the sanctions that I had. Iran had no money for Hamas or Hezbollah or any of the 28 different spheres of terror. And they are spheres of terror, horrible terror. They had no money. It was a big story, and you know it. You covered it very well, actually. They had no money for terror. They were broke. Now they're a rich nation, and now what they're doing is they're spreading that money around.
Rich and funding terrorists.
Look at what's happening with the Houthis and Yemen. Look at what's going on in the Middle East. This would have never happened. I will get that settled and fast, and I'll get the war with Ukraine and Russia ended. If I'm president-elect, I'll get it done before even becoming president.
Vice President Harris, he says you hate Israel.
That's absolutely not true. I have my entire career and life supported Israel and the Israeli people. He knows that. He's trying to, again, divide and distract from the reality, which is it is very
this is a
well
much more
known
difficult issue for her.
that Donald Trump is weak
There's
and
not a way for
wrong
her to
on
message
national
in a way that
security
will be
and foreign
successful.
policy. It is well known
Did she
that
just
he
say
admires
Donald Trump is weak on
dictators,
foreign
wants to be a
policy?
dictator on day one, according to himself.
She's watching two hot wars.
It is well known
That's the dictator on
that
day
he
one
said
thing.
of Putin that he can do whatever the hell he wants and go into Ukraine. It is well known that he said when Russia went into Ukraine, it was brilliant. It is well known he exchanged love letters with Kim Jong-un.
She's blatantly
And it
lying.
is absolutely
Blatant
well
lies.
known that these dictators and
not
autocrats
checking her,
are
though.
rooting
Right, they're not
for
gonna.
you to be president again because they're so clear. They can manipulate you with flattery and favors. And that is why so many military leaders who you have worked with have told me you are a disgrace.
It's taken her almost an
That
hour
is
to start
why
sort of
we
directly
understand that
addressing
we
him. It's
have
kind
to
of
have a
interesting.
president who is not consistently weak and wrong on
Vice
national
President
security,
Harris.
including the importance of
about Joe
upholding
Biden.
and respecting in highest regard our military.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
They're the ones, and she's the one that caused it, that's weak on national security by allowing every nation last month for the year, 168 different countries sending people into our country. Their crime rates are way down. Putin endorsed her last week,
Crime rates.
said, I hope she wins. And I think he meant it because what he's gotten away with is absolutely incredible. It wouldn't have happened with me. The leaders of other countries think that they're weak and incompetent, and they are. They're grossly incompetent. And I just ask one question. Why does Biden go in and kill the Keystone Pipeline and approve the single biggest deal that Russia's ever made, Nord Stream 2, the biggest pipeline anywhere in the world going to Germany and all over Europe? Because they're weak and they're ineffective. And Biden, by the way,
President
gets paid
Trump,
a lot of money.
Thank you. We have a lot of issues to get to.
We'll be right back with much more of this historic ABC News presidential debate from the National Constitution Center right here in Philadelphia. Back in a moment.
So first hour in, and we're getting our first commercial break. Are you getting the signal to leave us?
Yeah, I think it's about good time. But hey, thanks for having us.
Yep,
This
absolutely.
Thank you guys both for being here.
This has been amazing.
You guys killed it.
Thank you.
So we're in the commercial break,
God.
which I imagine will probably only be, what, a couple minutes?
2 minutes. 2 minutes probably at the most.
And then we do another 30 with most of it being final statements.
Yeah.
How much longer is it?
It's supposed to be 90 minutes in total. So if we've gotten an hour in, roughly when we get back, I'd say about 30 minutes left. It's hard to say completely.
I certainly think Kamala's done better than a lot of people thought she was going to do, but not that I think it's a tremendous performance. Donald Trump has gotten angry, and that's what I think she's trying to get him to do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I did think he turned around the 2020 election pretty well.
Yeah, I did too.
He's getting into it. It's a weak spot for him.
Yeah.
Regular people are sitting there confused, and they're tuning out. They're saying, I don't know what this is or what he's talking about or why it matters. So when he flips and says, it's old news, we need to focus, sounds like someone gave him good advice, and he remembered and he jumped in. But gentlemen, would you like to introduce yourselves before the commercial?
Okay, I'm Dan Bishop, North Carolina, running for Attorney General there instead of for re-election to Congress, but glad to be with you guys tonight.
AG is a big deal.
It is. Great state.
Right. Eli Crane, freshman member from Arizona.
Right
It's good to
on.
have him both. Why did you choose to run for AG over re-election?
This place is pretty frustrating. We don't do things here. It's stagnant and neutralized, and AG spots have emerged over the last 20 years. One of the most consequential positions in American politics, and I'm ready to get in and make things happen.
And how long have you been in Congress?
Just 5 years. I was elected in a special election in 2019.
That's interesting.
So you're new to the game. Are you excited about it possibly being AG and having that kind of impact?
Absolutely.
On your state?
Not that new to the game. I was a state legislator before that.
Okay.
Served in local government at one point. Haven't done politics all the time, but 5 years in Congress is it's a long time.
It must feel like a lifetime.
You could sit. I could stay for another 5, 10, 15 years, and most do.
But if you feel like you're called to be somewhere else.
That's right. I think there's another opportunity. I'm going to leave it to great, tough warriors like Eli Crane. He is really fantastic. It was hard for me even to imagine, as he just said it, that he's a freshman, because we were together in that Patriot 20 fight at the beginning of 2023 about what leadership was going to, who was going to be in leadership and what we were going to do to get there. And boy, that was a great time. And he's a courageous guy.
What have you guys thought of the debate so far?
I think it's been pretty awesome. I kind of came into this debate thinking that even if Trump bombed, I think he was going to be okay. And the reason for that is because I don't think that he's up in the polls and, for the first time ever. And he's bringing so many new people into his camp because he's a great debater. I think that he's up and people want him back because they can see the difference in their lived experiences. And he has a track record as a strong leader. I mean, he just does. And so I think he's doing a great job. I think he's been funny. I actually like his demeanor as well. I think he's the type of guy that, if you get under his skin, he can get more emotional. But I think he's done a really good job, not really focusing on her, but focusing on the commentators and just, going through his answers. And the cool thing about Trump is we used to say in the military all the time, you get good at what you practice. He's been doing debates, long form podcasts. He answers questions all the time. Whereas her, on the other hand, they have to hide her in the basement because they're so afraid that if she opens her mouth, she's not going to, she's going to ruin this moderate problem solver false persona that the media is trying so hard to create right now.
Right. I think so. There's a lot of people that are mentioning Trump bringing up they're eating the dogs, they're eating the pets, and the media's repeatedly said this is fake news. It's a slightly off skew talking point. Most of the reports that are coming out are that they're capturing ducks and waterfowl from local parks. There is some reporting. I have seen many people claim that they've experienced this in and around the area and other areas as well, but no official reporting. Doesn't matter. They're making fun of Donald Trump, saying, aha, he just said this lie. Haha, they're going to make fun of you. Do these liberals that are hearing this, do they really believe that tomorrow the moderate voters who watch the debate are going to Google search that story, are going to look it up, or seek out a fact check on this? Or are they going to go, holy what? And they're going to call their buddy, Vic, you hear this? Wow, that's crazy. And I'll tell you what's going to happen, because it is detrimental to this country that this happens this way. Many of these people are going to be hanging out for a pizza and a beer with their buddies, and they're going to be like, you hear these people are eating dogs? That's crazy. And that's the extent of what they've heard.
I think Trump punches through with things like that, and then they turn out to be basically true. I mean, maybe a detail's off, but in essence, something's going on. It's very odd.
So we are back here with the debate.
It's been the position of the Biden administration that we must defend Ukraine from Russia, from Vladimir Putin, to defend their sovereignty, their democracy, that it's in America's best interest to do so, arguing that if Putin wins, he may be emboldened to move even further into other countries. You have said you would solve this war in 24 hours. You said so just before the break tonight. How exactly would you do that? And I want to ask you a very simple question tonight. Do you want Ukraine to win this war?
I want the war to stop. I want to save lives that are being people being killed by the millions. It's the millions. It's so much worse than the numbers that you're getting, which are fake numbers. Look, we're in for 250 billion or more because they don't ask Europe, which is a much bigger beneficiary to getting this thing done than we are. They're in for $150 billion less because Biden and you don't have the courage to ask Europe like I did with NATO. They paid billions and billions, hundreds of billions of dollars when I said, either you pay up or we're not going to protect you anymore. So that's maybe one of the reasons they don't like me as much as they like weak people. But you take a look at what's happening. We're in for 250 to 275 billion.
There's just no one who could replicate
to
this style.
150. They should be forced to equalize. With that being said, I want to get the war settled. I know Zelensky very well, and I know Putin very well. I have a good relationship, and they respect your president, okay? They respect me. They don't respect Biden. How would you respect him? Why? For what reason? He hasn't even made a phone call in 2 years to Putin. Hasn't spoken to anybody. They don't
Kamala
even try to get it. That is a war that's dying to be settled. I will get it settled before I even become president. If I win, when I'm president-elect, and what I'll do is I'll speak to one, I'll speak to the other, I'll get them together. That war would have never happened. And in fact, when I saw Putin after I left, unfortunately left because our country has gone to hell. But after I left, when I saw him building up soldiers, he did it after I left. I said, oh, he must be negotiating. It must be a good, strong point of negotiation. Well, it wasn't, because Biden had no idea how to talk to him. He had no idea how to stop it. And now you have millions of people dead, and it's only getting worse, and it could lead to World War III. Don't kid yourself, David. We're playing with World War III, and we have a president that we don't even know if he's... Where is our president? We don't even know if he's a president.
And just to clarify
they threw him out of a campaign like a dog. We don't even know. Is he our president? But we have a president,
Mr. President,
that doesn't know he's alive.
Your time is up. Just to clarify the question, do you believe it's in the U.S. best interests for Ukraine to win this war, yes or no?
I think it's the U.S. best interest to get this war finished and just get it done.
All right.
Negotiate a deal, because we have to stop all of these human lives from being destroyed.
I want to take this to Vice President Harris. I want to get your thoughts on support for Ukraine in this moment, but also, as Commander-in-Chief, if elected, how would you deal with Vladimir Putin, and would it be any different from what we're seeing from President Biden?
Well, first of all, it's important to remind the former president you're not running against Joe Biden, you're running against me. I believe the reason that Donald Trump says that this war would be over within 24 hours is because he would just give it up. And that's not who we are as Americans. Let's understand what happened here. I actually met with Zelensky a few days before Russia invaded, tried through force to change territorial boundaries, to defy one of the most important international rules and norms, which is the importance of sovereignty and territorial integrity. And I met with President Zelensky. I shared with him American intelligence about how he could defend himself.
Last one in the room.
Days later, I went to NATO's eastern flank, to Poland and Romania. And through the work that I and others did, we brought 50 countries together to support Ukraine in its righteous defense. And because of our support, because of the air defense, the ammunition, the artillery, the javelins, the Abrams tanks that we have provided, Ukraine stands as an independent and free country. If Donald Trump were president, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv right now. And understand what that would mean, because Putin's agenda is not just about Ukraine. Understand why the European allies and our NATO allies are so thankful that you are no longer president, and that we understand the importance of the greatest military alliance the world has ever known, which is NATO, and what we have done to preserve the ability of Zelensky and the Ukrainians to fight for their independence. Otherwise, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv with his eyes on the rest
She's
of
not
Europe,
really saying what
starting
she would
with
do
Poland. And why don't
differently.
you tell
No,
the 800,000 Polish
Total
Americans
nonsense.
right here in
Why
Pennsylvania
did Putin not
how
make any
quickly you
moves
would
when
give
Donald
up
Trump was president?
for the sake
That's
of
the key here.
favor and
Because
what you
he's
think is a
respected.
friendship with what is known to be a dictator
I just
who
feel
would
like
eat you for lunch.
she's getting riled up right now. Like her hair
Vice
shaking.
President
her hair's
Harris,
a little
thank you.
messy.
We've heard from both of you on Ukraine tonight. Afghanistan came up in the last hour. I wanted her to respond to
No
something you
response?
said earlier, and please, I'll give you a minute here.
Putin would be sitting in Moscow, and he wouldn't have lost 300,000 men and women, but he would have been sitting in Moscow. Quiet, please. He would have been sitting quiet in Moscow, much happier than he is right now. But eventually, you know, he's got a thing that other people
Feminists are
don't
gonna
have. He's
be
got
so
nuclear
mad
weapons. They
tomorrow.
don't ever talk about that. He's got nuclear
sorry, don't
weapons.
be mad.
Nobody ever thinks about that. And eventually, maybe he'll use them, and maybe he hasn't been that threatening. But he does have that, something we don't even like to talk about. Nobody likes to talk about it. But just so you understand, they sent her to negotiate peace before this war started. 3 days later, he went in and he started the war. Because everything they said was weak and stupid. They said the wrong things. That war should have never started. She was the emissary. They sent her in to negotiate with Zelensky and Putin, and she did. And the war started 3 days
That's
later.
devastating.
And that's the
Wow.
kind of
That is
talent we have with her. She's worse than Biden, in my
know that.
opinion. I think he's the worst president in the history of our country. She goes down as the worst vice president in the history of our country. But let me tell you something. She is a horrible negotiator. They sent her in to negotiate. As soon as they left, Putin did the invasion.
President Trump, thank you. You did bring up something. You said she went to negotiate with Vladimir Putin. Vice President Harris, have you ever met Vladimir Putin? Can you clarify tonight?
Yet again, I said it at the beginning of this debate, you're going to hear a bunch of lies coming from this fellow. And that is another one. When I went to meet with President Zelensky, I've now met with him over 5 times.
So yes.
The reality is it has been about standing as America always should, as a leader upholding international rules and norms, as a leader who shows strength, understanding that the alliances we have around the world are dependent
Like
on
Afghanistan.
our ability to look out for our friends and
This
not
is just
favor
fluff, though.
our
I mean,
enemies
she's
because
not saying
you
what
adore
she's specifically
strongmen
capable
instead
of doing.
caring about
She's obsessed with Donald
democracy.
Trump, and I get
and
that,
that is
but
very much what is
else?
at stake here.
Speech, you're
The
fine.
President of the United States is commander-in-chief, and the American people have a right to rely on a president who understands the significance of America's role and responsibility in terms of ensuring that there is stability and ensuring we stand up for our principles and not
Stability.
sell them for the benefit
Two
of
wars going
personal
on?
flattery.
I don't know.
We've
about
talked
that.
about Ukraine and Vladimir Putin. I do want to talk about Afghanistan. It came up in the first hour of this debate. I want to move on to Afghanistan.
Stoltenberg said Trump did the most amazing thing I've ever seen. He got these countries, the 28 countries at the time, to pay up. He said, I've never seen. He's the head of NATO. He said, I've never seen. For years, we were paying almost all of NATO. We were being ripped off by European nations, both on trade and on NATO. I got them to pay up by saying one of the statements you made before, if you don't pay, we're not going to protect you.
President
Otherwise,
Trump.
we would have never gotten it. He said it was one of the most incredible jobs that he's ever seen done.
Thank you. I want to turn to Afghanistan. It came up in the first hour of the debate, and we witnessed a poignant moment today on Capitol Hill, honoring the soldiers who died in the chaotic withdrawal from Afghanistan. I do want to ask the Vice President, do you believe you bear any responsibility in the way that withdrawal played out?
Well, I will tell you, I agreed with President Biden's decision to pull out of Afghanistan. 4 presidents said they would, and Joe Biden did. And as a result, America's taxpayers are not paying the $300 million a day we were paying for that endless war. And as of today, there is not one member of the United States military who is in active duty in a combat zone in any war zone around the world, the first time this century. But let's understand how we got to where we are.
She's also not
Donald Trump, when he
acknowledging
was
the loss of
president,
life right now.
negotiated
at all.
one of the weakest deals you can imagine. He calls himself a deal maker. Even his national security
How can you
advisor
skirt
said
that?
it was a weak, terrible deal. And here's how it went
one he
down.
fired?
He bypassed the Afghan government. He negotiated directly with a terrorist organization called the Taliban. The negotiation involved the Taliban getting 5,000 Taliban terrorists released. And get this, and the president at the time invited the Taliban to Camp David, a place of storied significance for us as Americans, a place where we honor the importance of American diplomacy, where we invite and receive.
Is she not going to acknowledge Abdigate at all?
respected world leaders.
No, she can't.
And this
And she won't know.
former president, as president, invited them to Camp David because he does
does
not
evade. She's
again
evaded
appreciate
consistently.
the
The whole
role
debate.
and responsibility of the president of
And
the
maybe
United
she brought
States
them to Camp David to
be
stop
commander-in-chief
the
with a
people.
level of
She doesn't care.
respect.
I don't know if
And
people
this
care
gets
about that.
back
I
to
don't.
No,
the
no.
point of how he has consistently
but-
disparaged and
Sorry.
demeaned members of
That's
our
also why she
military,
wouldn't show up to
fallen
Arlington
soldiers,
when the
and
families
the work
invited
that
her.
we must do to uphold the strength and the respect of the United States of America around the world.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump, your response to her saying that you began the negotiations with the Taliban.
So, if you take a look at that period of time, the Taliban was killing our soldiers, a lot of them, with snipers. And I got involved with the Taliban because the Taliban was doing the killing. That's the fighting force within Afghanistan. They don't bother doing that because, they deal with the wrong people all the time. But I got involved. And Abdul is the head of the Taliban. He is still the head of the Taliban. And I told Abdul, don't do it anymore. You do it anymore, you're going to have problems. And he said, why do you send me a picture of my house? I said, you're going to have to figure that out, Abdul. And for 18 months, we had nobody killed. We did have an agreement negotiated by Mike Pompeo. It was a very good agreement. The reason it was good, we were getting out. We would have been out faster than them, but we wouldn't have lost the soldiers. We wouldn't have left many Americans behind, and we wouldn't have left $85 billion worth of brand new, beautiful military equipment behind. And just to finish,
Which she just
they
skipped over.
blew it. The agreement said you have to do this, and they didn't do it. The agreement was terminated by us because they didn't do what they were supposed to do.
I want to move on.
And these people did the worst withdrawal and, in my opinion, the most embarrassing moment in the history of our country. And by the way, that's why Russia attacked Ukraine, because they saw how incompetent she and her boss are.
President Trump, thank you.
I feel like it wasn't like top
I want to move
5
on now to race and
terrible
politics
moments
in
in
this
history
country.
for us.
Mr. President, you recently said of Vice
Gotta
President
be.
Harris, quote, I didn't know she was black until a number of years ago when she happened to turn black, and now she wants to be known as black. I want to ask a bigger picture question here tonight. Why do you believe it's appropriate to weigh in on the racial identity of your opponent?
I don't, and I don't care. I don't care what she is. I don't care. You make a big deal out of something. I couldn't care less. Whatever she wants to be is okay with me.
But those were your words, so I'm
I
asking.
don't know. I mean, all I can say is I read where she was not black, that she put out, and I'll say that. And then I read that she was black, and that's okay. Either one was okay with me. That's up to her. That's up to her.
Vice President Harris, your thoughts on this?
I think honestly, I think it's a tragedy that we have
She's not
someone
even looking
who
at the camera right now.
wants to be
this is an
president
uncomfortable
who
question for
has
her.
consistently, over the course of his career,
Well, she
attempted
doesn't
to
know who
use
she
race
is
to
right now.
divide the American people. I do believe that the vast majority of us know that we have so much more in common than what separates us, and we don't want this kind of
Coming from a
approach that is
Marxist.
just constantly
Interesting.
trying to divide us, and especially by race. And let's remember
That's what Marxists do. They divide
how Donald
people.
Trump started. He
Talks
was
about race all the time. That's
You
her
remember
favorite
Biden's
thing.
speech
land.
before
He
the red lights?
owned land. He owned buildings.
He's not trying to
and
divide.
he was investigated
My butt's been
because
wiped.
he refused to rent property to black families. Let's remember, this is the same individual who took out a full-page ad in the New York Times calling for the execution of 5 young black and Latino boys who were innocent, the Central Park 5. Took out a full-page ad calling for their execution. This is the same individual who spread birther lies about the first black president of the United States. And I think the American people
I do love how
better
Trump is
than
not
that.
acknowledging her all night.
Want
He has
better
not
than
looked at her
this.
barely. He's barely looked at her
Want
face. He's
someone
like,
who
"Talk-
understands as
say
I
your
do,
lies,
I
lady."
travel our
I
country.
don't give an F.
We see in each other a friend. We see in each other a neighbor. We don't want a leader who is constantly trying to have Americans point their fingers at each other.
Wow.
I meet with people all the time
Crazy.
who tell me, can we please just have discourse about how we're going to invest in the aspirations and the ambitions and the dreams of the American people?
Whoa.
Knowing that regardless of people's color or the
high-blown
language
rhetoric.
their grandmother speaks, we all
likes lofty.
have the same
Yeah.
dreams and aspirations and
Didn't he
want a
just say,
president
"I don't care what
who
race he is,
invests
let's
in
move on"?
those,
Yeah.
not in hate and
She
division.
really cares what race you are.
Vice President
That's
Harris.
the
Thank you.
reality.
Lindsay?
President Trump, this is now your third time.
What? This is the most divisive presidency in the history of our country. There's never been anything like it. They're destroying our country, and they come up with things like what she just said. Going back many, many years, when a lot of people, including Mayor Bloomberg, agreed with me on the Central Park 5, they admitted, they said, they pled guilty. And I said, well, if they pled guilty, they badly hurt a person, killed a person ultimately. And if they pled guilty, then they pled, we're not guilty. But this is a person that has to stretch back years, 40, 50 years ago, because there's nothing now. I built one of the greatest economies in the history of the world, and I'm going to build it again. It's going to be bigger, better, and stronger. But they're destroying our economy. They have no idea what a good economy is. Their oil policies, every single policy. And remember this, she is Biden. You know, she's trying to get away from Biden. I don't know the gentleman,
job,
she says.
Trump, yeah.
She is Biden. The worst inflation we've ever had, a horrible economy because inflation has made it so bad, and she can't get away with that.
Thank you. Your time is up,
I
Lindsay.
want to respond to that, though. I want to just respond briefly. Clearly, I am not Joe Biden, and I am certainly not Donald Trump. And what I do offer is a new generation of leadership for our country.
Well,
One who
hold on.
believes in what is possible, one who brings a sense of optimism
What can be unburdened
about
by
what
what
we
has
can
been.
do instead of always
Coconut
disparaging
trees for all.
the American people. I believe in what we can do
But all she
to
did was disparage the
strengthen
right,
our small
her
businesses,
talking.
which is why I have a plan. Let's talk about our plans.
We tried to get you to talk about it.
And let's
You
compare
wouldn't.
the plans. I have a plan to give startup businesses $50,000 tax deduction, to pursue their ambitions, their innovation, their ideas, their hard work. I have a plan, $6,000 for young families for
coming
the first
up
year of
on
your
the
child's
90-minute
life
mark.
to help you
Yeah.
in that most
So they
critical
are
stage of your
both
child's
about to have to
development.
deliver
I
their
have a
closing
plan
statements. And
that is
she
about
seems a
allowing
little
people to be able to
petite to
pursue
me.
what has been fleeting in terms of the American dream
Her
by
hair has been
offering
getting worse and worse throughout the
help
night. She's
with
so
down
flustered.
payment of $25,000 down
Oh, I feel
payment
like it hasn't
assistance
changed at
for
all.
first-time home buyers.
No.
That's
Yeah.
the kind of conversation, I believe, David, that people really want tonight, as opposed to a conversation that is constantly about belittling and name-calling. Let's turn the page
Vice President
and move
Harris,
forward.
thank you. Let's turn to policy.
President
Let's turn
Trump,
back
we
to
have
policy.
to move on. President Trump.
Let's turn to policy,
She has
please.
a plan to defund the police. She has a plan to confiscate everybody's gun.
President Trump,
she
we
has
do
a
have to
plan
move
to
on to
not
other
allow
issues.
fracking in Pennsylvania or anywhere else.
Okay.
That's what her plan is until just recently.
I just need to respond
President
because
Trump,
the
President
former
Trump,
president has said
no, I'm
something
sorry.
twice that I need to respond to.
I'm sorry. We're going to move on, Vice President Harris. President Trump, this is now your third time running for president. You have long vowed to repeal and replace the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare. You have failed to accomplish that. You now say you're going to keep Obamacare, quote, unless we can do something much better. Correct. Last month, you said, quote, we're working on it. So tonight, 9 years after you first started running, do you have a plan, and can you tell us what it is?
Obamacare was lousy health care, always was. It's not very good today. And what I said, that if we come up with something, and we are working on things, we're going to do it and we're going to replace it. But remember this, I inherited Obamacare because Democrats wouldn't change it. They wouldn't vote for it. They were unanimous. They wouldn't vote to change it. If they would have done that, we would have had a much better plan than Obamacare. But the Democrats came up. They wouldn't vote for it. I had a choice to make when I was president. Do I save it and make it as good as it can be, never going to be great, or do I let it rot? And I felt I had an obligation, even though politically it would have been good to just let it rot and let it go away. I decided, and I told my people, the top people, and they're very good people. I have a lot of good people in that administration. We read about the bad ones. We had some real bad ones, too, and so do they. They have really bad ones. The difference is they don't get rid of them. But let me just explain. I had a choice to make. Do I save it and make it as good as it can be, or do I let it rot? And I saved it. I did the right thing. But it's still never going to be great, and it's too expensive for people. And what we will do is we're looking at different plans. If we can come up with a plan that's going to cost our people, our population, less money and be better health care than Obamacare, then I would absolutely do it. But until then, I'd run it as good as it can be run.
So just a yes or no, you still do not have a plan?
I have concepts of a plan. I'm not president right now. But if we come up with something, I would only change it if we come up with something that's better and less expensive. And there are concepts and options we have to do that. And you'll be hearing about it in the not too distant future.
Vice President Harris, in 2017, you supported Bernie Sanders' proposal to do away with private insurance and create a government-run healthcare system. 2 years later, you proposed a plan that included a private insurance option. What is your plan today?
Well, first of all, I absolutely support, and over the last 4 years as vice president, private health care options. But what we need to do is maintain and grow the Affordable Care Act. But I'll get to that, Lindsay. I just need to respond to a previous point that the former president has made. I've made very clear my position on fracking. And then this business about taking everyone's guns away. Tim Walz and I are both gun owners. We're not taking anybody's guns away. So stop with the continuous lying about this stuff. As it relates to the Affordable Care Act, understand, just look at the history to know where people stand. When Donald Trump was president, 60 times he tried to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. 60 times. I was a senator at the time when I will never forget the early morning hours when it was up for a vote in the United States Senate. And the late, great John McCain, who you have disparaged as being, you don't like him, you said at the time, because he got caught. He was an American hero. The late, great John McCain, I will never forget that night, walked onto the Senate floor and said, no, you don't.
She has
no,
an
you
F
don't.
rating with the
No, you
NRA.
don't get rid of the Affordable Care Act. You
Just
have
for
no
context.
plan. And what the Affordable Care Act has done is eliminate the
Me too.
ability of insurance companies to deny people with
Well, we're talking
pre-existing
about gun
conditions.
control, right?
I don't have to tell the people watching tonight. You remember what that was like? Remember when an insurance company could deny if a child had asthma, if someone was a breast cancer survivor, if a grandparent had diabetes? And thankfully, as I've been vice president, and we over the last 4 years have strengthened the Affordable Care Act, we have allowed for the first time Medicare to negotiate drug prices on behalf of you, the American people. Donald Trump said he was going to allow Medicare to negotiate drug prices. He never did.
Funny.
We did.
She says
and now we have capped the cost
when
of
it's her
insulin
and
at
Biden.
$35 a month.
But then she also
Since I've
says,
been
I'm not
vice
Joe
president,
Biden.
We have capped the
So I
cost
don't
of
really know
medication
what
for
we're supposed
seniors
to
at
take from this.
$2,000 a year. And when I am president, we will do that for all people, understanding that the value I
am
bring
Joe
to
Biden
this
when convenient to me.
is that access to health care should be a right and not just a privilege of those who can afford it. And the plan has to be to strengthen the Affordable Care Act, not get rid of it.
Vice President Harris,
in terms of where Donald Trump stands on that.
I want to move to an issue that's important for a lot
She made a mistake. Number one, John McCain fought Obamacare for 10 years. But it wasn't only him. It were all of the Democrats that kept it going. And you know what? We can do much better than Obamacare, much less money. But she won't improve private insurance for people, private medical insurance. That's another thing she doesn't want to get. People are paying privately for insurance that have worked hard and made money, and they want to have private. She wants everybody to be on government insurance where you wait 6 months for an operation that you need immediately.
President Trump, thank you. We have another issue that we'd like to get to that's important for a number of Americans, in particular younger voters, and that's climate change. President Trump, with regard to the environment, you say that we have to have clean air and clean water. Vice President Harris, you call climate change an existential threat. The question to you both tonight is, what would you do to fight climate change? And Vice President Harris, we'll start with you. 1 minute for you each.
Well, the former president had said that climate change is a hoax. And what we know is that it is very real. You ask anyone who lives in a state who has experienced these extreme weather occurrences, who now is either being denied home insurance or it's being jacked up. You ask anybody who has been the victim of what that means in terms of losing their home, having nowhere to go. We know that we can actually deal with this issue. The young people of America care deeply about this issue. And I am proud that as vice president over the last 4 years, we have invested $1 trillion in a clean energy economy, while we have also increased domestic gas production to historic levels. We have created over 800,000 new manufacturing jobs while I have been vice president. We have invested in clean energy to the point that we are opening up factories around the world. Donald Trump said he was going to create manufacturing jobs. He lost manufacturing jobs. And I'm also proud to have the endorsement of the United Auto Workers and Sean Fain, who also know that part of building a clean energy economy includes investing in American-made products, American automobiles. It includes growing what we can do around American manufacturing and opening up auto plants, not closing them like happened under Donald Trump.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
That didn't happen under Donald Trump. Let me just tell you, they lost 10,000 manufacturing jobs this last month. It's going, they're all leaving. They're building big auto plants in Mexico, in many cases owned by China. They're building these massive plants, and they think they're going to sell their cars into the United States because of these people. What they have given to China is unbelievable. But we're not going to let that. We'll put tariffs on those cars so they can't come into our country, because they will kill the United Auto Workers and any auto worker, whether it's in Detroit or South Carolina or any other place. What they've done to business and manufacturing in this country is horrible. We have nothing because they refuse. You know, Biden doesn't go after people because supposedly China paid him millions of dollars. He's afraid to do it. Between him and his son, they get all this money from Ukraine. They get all this money from all of these different countries. Yep. And then you wonder, why is he so loyal to this one, that one, Ukraine, China? Why is he? Why did he get $3.5 million from the mayor of Moscow's wife? Why did she pay him $3.5 million? This is a crooked administration, and they're selling our country down the tubes.
President Trump, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll be right back with closing statements from both of our candidates. An historic night, this ABC News presidential debate from Philadelphia. Back in a moment.
Oh, boy. All right, the second commercial, and then we're going to get those closing statements. But judging by the sentiment that I'm seeing on X, it seems like a lot of people believe Kamala Harris is doing better than they predicted. And I'm seeing a lot of sentiment from people saying it's 3 versus 1. The moderators are coming after Trump. I think that's a fair assessment. They're not fact-checking Kamala Harris when she lies.
No, but they're fact-checking Trump.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
every time.
And we knew that this was gonna happen. I want to bring up a tweet that Katie Pavlich put out. She said the fact that there aren't more questions about inflation is a reflection of how ABC News feels about the plight of Americans under the Biden-Harris administration. I think it's pretty telling. I think that's a very good point, and there haven't been a lot of questions towards Kamala based on this 40-year high inflation that we're seeing.
I mean, she evades every question. So
Yes.
every
Yes, she does.
point where they've asked her to account for something, she's avoided answering the question, and they never pursue that, never point that out. There are occasionally you could say that Trump does it on occasion as well, but he deals with the issue, even if she just avoids. And it was happening at least 4 or 5 times in the course of the debate. I wonder why the moderators don't point that out.
It is interesting. I mean, she wouldn't answer about the Biden-Harris administration leaving the Trump tariffs in place. She's avoided a number of things. And I think part of it is, again, she does not want to be tied to Joe Biden. She just told us, I am not Joe Biden. And then minutes later said, well, we did this, meaning me and this guy named Joe who put me in the White House. She's in this bizarre position where she's claiming to be a new generation while also trying to take accolades from an administration that she clearly has no respect for. Not that she should, but her name is on the bill.
It's one of the ways in which she's evaded the question. They asked her about how she's changing substantially all of the positions she announced. They're radically different, and she has no answer.
Here's a great tweet from Sean McGuire. He says, ABC has let Harris get away with the Charlottesville hoax, bloodbath hoax, police officers dying on J6 hoax, but they fact-checked Trump on animals in Ohio when he was correct.
Yeah.
Well said.
I don't know that he's completely correct on the eating the dogs thing, because I'll stress this. We're getting a lot of anecdotal anecdotes from locals, but no official reporting, which is probably the problem when the media doesn't want to cover the story. But I'll stress, I think we have pretty much strong evidence of the migrants taking local migratory birds,
like geese. Why did you go with dogs? Like I said, like geese is like the big story,
or
and
cats.
Cats is the big story.
Well,
but
the cat, that woman's American. That video of the woman with the cat.
But the geese
if Trump said these migrants are going to parks and hunting ducks in front of children, that's true.
Yes.
Well, here's an interesting point about that, because I know some people don't like how Trump talks, but I actually think a lot of people gravitate towards him because I hear people say all the time, and Dan, you might hear this as well, why can't politicians just talk like regular people? Why do they have to talk in platitudes? So when you look at some of the things that he said tonight, they were, in my opinion, hilarious, like run, spot, run, gonna send her a MAGA hat, nobody attends your rallies anyway, people are eating dogs. I mean, people laugh, but they also find this guy relatable because he doesn't talk like a politician, and that's one of the things about Trump that makes people relate to him, even though the guy, you wouldn't think so because the guy's a billionaire from New York. Like, I represent one of the most rural districts in the country out in Arizona's 2nd Congressional District. These folks are patriotic, they're hardworking, and you bring a billionaire down from New York and they love him because they relate to him despite their differences.
Well, and he only had to mention his upbringing once and walked away from it, right? How many times have we heard her mom and middle class, like, whereas he just said, I was given some money and I built an empire. I'm not going to go on and on about it. I mean, he knows that his success speaks for itself, where she has to convince you that she is someone from humble origin who is really connected to you. It's a big contrast right on the stage.
Tim, did you ever do any research on whether or not she actually worked at McDonald's?
Well, I mean, I read a few news stories, and they claim that she did not.
Okay. So
I mean, she claims she did, and the reporting was that they reached out to the McDonald's Corporation, I guess, issued a statement saying they had no record of her ever working there. She doesn't seem like the kind of person who does, unless you think she did. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm just interested because when she talks about, growing up in, impoverished conditions, and then you see her house growing up, it's just like her whole persona, this whole life they're trying to create is just a complete lie.
Yeah. Looks like we are coming back to
Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.
Debate here.
Here again, David Muir and Lindsay Davis.
Welcome back tonight. The time has come for closing statements, and Vice President Harris, we begin with you.
So I think you've heard tonight 2 very different visions for our country. One that is focused on the future, and the other that is focused on the past, and an attempt to take us backward. But we're not going back. And I do believe that the American people know we all have so much more in common than what separates us. And we can chart a new way forward. And a vision of that includes having a plan, understanding the aspirations, the dreams, the hopes, the ambition of the American people, which is why I intend to create an opportunity economy, investing in small businesses, in new families, in what we can do around protecting seniors, what we can do that is about giving hardworking folks a break in bringing down the cost of living. I believe in what we can do together that is about sustaining America's standing in the world and ensuring that we have the respect that we so rightly deserve, including respecting our military and ensuring we have the most lethal fighting force in the world. I will be a president that will protect our fundamental rights and freedoms, including the right of a woman to make decisions about her own body and not have her government tell her what to do. I'll tell you, I started my career as a prosecutor. I was a DA, I was an attorney general, a United States senator, and now vice president. I've only had one client, the people. And I'll tell you, as a prosecutor, I never asked a victim or a witness, are you a Republican or a Democrat? The only thing I ever asked them, are you okay? And that's the kind of president we need right now. Someone who cares about you and is not putting themselves first. I intend to be a president for all Americans and focus on what we can do over the next 10 and 20 years to build back up our country by investing right now in you, the American people.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump?
So she just started by saying she's going to do this, she's going to do that, she's going to do all these wonderful things. Why hasn't she done it? She's been there for 3.5 years. They've had 3.5 years to fix the border. They've had 3.5 years to create jobs and all the things we talked about. Why hasn't she done it? She should leave right now, go down to that beautiful White House, go to the Capitol, get everyone together and do the things you want to do, but you haven't done it and you won't do it because you believe in things that the American people don't believe in. You believe in things like we're not going to frack. We're not going to take fossil fuel. We're not going to do things that are going to make this country strong, whether you like it or not. Germany tried that, and within 1 year, they were back to building normal energy plants. We're not ready for it. We can't sacrifice our country for the sake of bad vision. But I just ask one simple question. Why didn't she do it? We're a failing nation. We're a nation that's in serious decline. We're being laughed at all over the world. All over the world, they're laughed. I know the leaders very well. They're coming to see me. They call me. We're laughed at all over the world. They don't understand what happened to us as a nation. We're not a leader. We don't have any idea what's going on. We have wars going on in the Middle East. We have wars going on with Russia and Ukraine. We're going to end up in a third world war, and it'll be a war like no other because of nuclear weapons, the power of weaponry. I rebuilt our entire military. She gave a lot of it away to the Taliban. She gave it to Afghanistan. What these people have done to our country, and maybe toughest of all, is allowing millions of people to come into our country. Many of them are criminals, and they're destroying our country. The worst president, the worst vice president in the history of our country.
President Trump, thank you. And that is our ABC News presidential debate from here in Philadelphia at the National Constitution.
That was an absolutely brutal closing statement from Trump.
I think Trump won the debate in the closing statement. Why hasn't she done it?
Absolutely.
It's pretty damn good.
I mean, she just offered platitudes, vision and opportunity economy, and I'm gonna work hard for this, that, and the other, but there's no significance. He can really nail the Biden administration on all of the specific failures and things that American people feel day to day, the economy, crime. It's not a comparison between the two of them. They're completely different.
It was exactly 40 years ago when Ronald Reagan, no, I guess it's 44, when he said the famous words, "Are you better off now than you were 4 years ago?" Something that's rung through history. And I think Trump just did the same thing. Why haven't they done it?
Mm-hmm. Yep. There's no answer.
There's no answer to that.
And I think the American people know that Kamala Harris is voting for more of the same. And that is a huge factor in whether or not this election will turn out different. But with all that being said, we can sit here and we can clap and cheer for Trump and we can laugh at him saying, I'm talking now, or whatever, whatever that line was, that was absolutely hilarious. And the question is, are the Republicans prepared to win on the procedural grounds, that is ballot harvesting and whatever it is the Democrat shadow campaign may be? Because we can sit here and we can make arguments all day and night, but if Republicans don't have mail-in voting and ballot harvesting down, the real issue for the election is, Democrats know this, they need more pieces of paper with names on them than the Republicans are going to get. And if the Republicans just keep thinking, I'm going to argue to the American people and then we'll win, then they'll lose.
Do you want to introduce yourself? You joined us during closing statements.
I'm Eric Burleson, the congressman from Southwest Missouri.
What's your take on the debate? Do you think that the voters are motivated to turn out the way they need to? Sorry, I'm getting tongue-tied.
No, I mean, I think that I watch it and I think that Trump won. I said many times over that I think that this debate we're probably going to be disappointed because it's going to be a debate like most of them where each side watches it and says our side won. And so I think that Kamala's side is probably right now on MSNBC. They're saying that she slammed it.
They're popping champagne. They're excited. Yeah.
But I think that fundamentally this is a debate about the direction of the United States. And I think that the fact that, what's not seen in this debate is more important. And that is that people are seeing folks like the Cheneys, the Uniparty, all side behind Kamala. And then you're seeing folks like Robert Kennedy Jr. and others and Musk side behind Trump. And I think that this is a very pivotal moment in American history where we have, I think, a refreshing moment in American history where we see finally some people that are willing to break from all the tyranny that is the military-industrial complex, you name it. And I think that sadly, that I don't feel that was expressed in the debate tonight.
I think we should be fairly optimistic and hopeful. I mean, the reality is everything you just said, some of the most optimistic stuff I've heard in a long time. Despite the challenges we face these challenges only because we have a real opportunity to do away with these really awful things that have existed in our past. Easy example is the military-industrial complex waning. It looks like this challenge is actually because we're winning.
Yeah, and I think honestly, Tim, a lot of that is testament to shows like yourself. Back in the day, it was you could watch a couple different networks and they all kind of gaslit you in their own way, and they all had corporate sponsors that kind of controlled to a certain degree the narrative they were allowed to put out. But now, as the media has expanded, and there's so many shows like yourself, War Room, and others, people are going elsewhere for their news. And I think it's been great. I think it's really opened things up. And I think it's brought together a lot of different coalitions and factions that often didn't play well together or unite, who are tired of this system. They're tired of the federal government gaslighting them all the time, never doing anything for them. And it's creating this momentum and this new wave of people that just want to put our citizens first. They're tired of the forever wars. They're tired of the wide open borders. They're tired of the inflation. They're tired of the censorship. And so I think to Eric's point and your point, Tim, it's really cool to see this movement of, people getting together right now.
Yeah, I think we'll just, the debate being over, we'll wind down with some final thoughts. If you want to throw out your final thoughts on the matter.
Yeah, I think you guys are both getting it. Eric and Eli both said something, and Tim, you did too. I think when you talk about the people who are interested in Trump, who is gathering around him, that's the change agency, right? He's the change agent. He's the guy who's different. He's unorthodox. And when she talks about trying to lay out a vision, she can talk in lofty language. But he asked the question that's devastating to that: why haven't you done it? They're doing the same old thing. They are that orthodox, corporate-oriented, aligned, never, little sort of just continual deterioration and descent of the country. And are people fed up enough with that to make the change to go back and get Trump to do what he began to do before the COVID crisis hit? And I think it gives a great opportunity. And I think that's what freedom's all about, the opportunity to choose between those two visions. He gives a choice. And so I'm eager to see what people decide to do.
I hope this debate is a wake-up call for independent voters, because that's who a lot of this comes down to. I mean, they estimate basically 5% of the population who truly, when they say, I don't know who I'm voting for, mean it. They'll round up to 10, but another 5% kind of know. They're just sort of playing coy, I would say. And so much of it does come down to this question of, are you happy right now? Is this the life you want to live? Is this the direction you want the country to go? Is this what you want to give to your children and to your grandchildren? And I just think, obviously I'm more conservative and I have more conservative values, but I just don't think that Kamala Harris was able to sell, I am a new, fresh breath of air for the country and I will change the direction of this ship. I think people know Donald Trump is maybe not everyone's favorite personality, but he sets out to accomplish things and can point to an actual record. People want that. And it's just not something the Biden-Harris campaign can deliver.
Well, I imagine that in the next few days, all of the pollsters will give Kamala Harris a bump. Yeah. And they're gonna pull the select they want to pull from this and say this is where she really shined. And it will be a justification for why they can claim she's doing better, whether she actually is or not. But I suppose we'll start to wind things down. So I want to thank all of you gentlemen for joining me, as well as the all the members of Congress who joined to hang out. Shout out to Raymond G. Stanley Jr., who was on for a brief moment. Hannah Claire, thanks for being here. And of course, the entire crew, Kellen, Serge, Carter, everybody who helped put this together. Chuck, who's sitting back there. This has been a lot of fun. This has been a moment in history. And now we've got, 50, after today, 55 days? There's going to be 55 days until we see. It's a question not just about do the American people want to see a change from the current administration to Donald Trump, but also if the strategy, the lawfare, everything that's been in play up to this moment will be enough to either stop or support Donald Trump. So that being said, everybody, make sure you smash the like button, subscribe to this channel, share the show with your friends, become a member by going to timcast.com, click join us. We could use your support. And you'll get access to our Discord server where we will be back tomorrow with our members-only uncensored show at 10 p.m. You can watch the show, of course, tomorrow at 8 p.m. live, and then at 10, we will bring you, the members, in to the conversation for the members-only uncensored call-in. You can follow me on X at Timcast. And again, smash the like button on your way out. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all tomorrow.